Hey, I never knew that song had lyrics. It's the Bennington Show on a Thursday. When you hear Green Day, that can only mean one thing. Eddie Trunk coming up in just a couple of minutes. This is the Bennington Show. I'm Ron Bennington. There's Gail Bennington.
Yo.
And I'm Ron Bennington. Now, every day we try to make our staff guest who picked the songs. Was it me or Gail? Joey?
Ron Bennington.
Gail Bennington.
So up to that's the rubber match with Chris Stanley.
Give me Gail Bennington.
Told you one of us would be going for the hit, and that was me. She was going deep, and I said, no, we got to go for the hit, Ron Bennington.
We already gave you that hint, Chris.
Yeah.
We said one person was going to pick a hit, the other deep tracks.
Yeah, we were going to deep track it the same way we're going to do for GPS Minneapolis this week.
Yeah, that's this Saturday, 3 p.m. on Deep Tracks Channel 27. I'm so excited for this one.
I'm very excited for this one.
This was a very interesting one. It's very different than some of the others, I think.
It's what I like to call separate but equal.
Yes, it is.
It's almost like...
There's a lot of different sounds going on here.
Yeah, so Minneapolis, a lot of people sent us in requests for this one. It was a deeper scene than I thought it was going to be, but really, really fun.
It was fun.
Because I said, yeah, we'll do a bunch by Prince, bunch by replacements. Then we're done. We're out of there. But a lot of cool bands.
Yeah, it was a fun one to do. So that's this Saturday, 3 p.m., Deep Tracks Channel 27.
And this was a big one for Joey Jojo because he's from Minneapolis. How many songs did you pick out, Joey?
I didn't pick out any.
I'm about bands.
Oh, The Replacements, Prince.
No, you didn't pick any of them.
Pick one guy.
You didn't pick them. You didn't even read that email yesterday, which was forwarded to me last night, and it's fucking hilarious, and it drove Chris crazy.
God damn it.
And I was laughing at the imaginary show in my mind of what would have happened if Joe would have just dry read it. But after the show, he said to me, "I don't have it in me to hurt Chris."
Oh.
I was like, did you ever have it at all, man? Did you ever have it to lose?
You ever have a touch to lose, man?
Sound just like him. You ought to go on that Dana Carvey show.
I know.
Do 5 impressions over and over and over for a half hour. Same
Wow. Okay, wow. I thought it was interesting that he said a lot of women do that impression.
Yeah, well, it's the noise there, but every woman that's been on the show so far has done Drew Barrymore.
I always find that to be more difficult than people think it. Because a lot of people say, I have a Drew Barrymore. Yeah. And I'm not always convinced.
I forget, somebody did it on... Hold on, Vito's here. Vito, what's is there news from the front?
Young Master Vito's.
The enemy has broken through! No! How many times do you think that bastard has just yelled no?
Yeah, that's a very good...
That's my impression of Chris Stanley.
What's your
catchphrase? Man who yells
the
no.
word no
Quite a
yelled.
Bit. All right, spy report. And it ties in with the Minneapolis. The coroner has come back and said Prince died from an opioid overdose. So the opiates, and we're not talking about heroin, his medicine.
Yes.
Medicine
Doctor
pills.
Prescribed medications.
Tough one. Prince gone. Well, he'll live on GPS this week.
Yeah.
Plug.
3 p.m. Saturday.
That's him. So join us as we mourn the opiate death of Prince.
Channel 27 Deep Tracks, 3 p.m. Saturday.
I know I'm going to start calling him the Sad Prince because I always think of a person who has an opiate problem as, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like no one loves them. No one loves somebody with an opiate.
Sad little Prince.
Yeah.
In pain. Physical pain.
Yeah, physical pain. That's the thing. You know, when somebody has physical pain, it's easy to get addicted.
Wow, once you get started.
Tell me about it. It's fucking great.
Once you pop, can't stop.
I wonder why we can't come up with a drug that's just really fucking great and no downside at all.
There's just nothing bad about it.
Actually, we don't even have a food like that. You know what I mean?
No.
We still don't have a food that isn't bad for you.
And anyone who tries to tell you, like, and it's delicious, you're like, as compared to something bad,
carrots.
maybe.
Oh, these carrots are so good for you, like beets. And you're like, yeah. Can you deep fry them? Oh, no, that's bad for you because it tastes good.
Bread them.
I mean, why would nature do that to us? Why would nature make us crave things that aren't good and just kind of hate things that are good?
I guess because at one time, those kinds of things were difficult to come by. So your body wanted to store up on things like fats and sugars and things like that because your
Fatty
body,
sugars.
Yeah, things your body needs.
That would be a great name for a fast food place, Fatty Sugars.
The fatty sugars. And I'll have a biggie fatty sugar, please.
And 2 sides of Fatty Sugars.
And yeah, you can just go ahead and supersize that.
Supersize Me is one of the great documentaries. Eddie Trunk is going to come in and talk about his rockumentaries that he's going to be doing, which is exciting. And what just happened there?
Just to plug in information for Eddie.
Why does this happen over and over? It just shows up like it's mail. It's called Reel to Reel, Tuesdays, 9:00 on Axe TV.
Access.
Where's
No.
the I in it then?
No, it's Access, not Access.
Access TV.
Access.
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 There's no I in there though.
Yeah, but it's an implied I.
I don't like that. But everyone's asking if Tidal Wave is touring this summer because of the opening song. And again, I think the song suffers through vocals.
I agree. I was very thrown off once the vocals kicked in.
Well, all you can concentrate now is the annoying guitar hook that goes on through the entire song. Bum, 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 bum. And it says Eddie Trunk is going to be on Bennington show. It's going to be an NEW flashback. Eddie was the first person that I met in New York. Second, black girl.
And you're still best friends today.
Still best friends. All best buddies. Yeah. But if you look back now, that's like knowing somebody in kindergarten and when you were in college. That's the weirdest thing about getting older is like... Everyone says, like, oh, yeah, I just talked to him the other day. It was like 7 years ago. He's doing great. You know, like 7 years, you're like, that's like a senior not seeing someone since the 5th grade and acting like we just picked right up again.
Well, I do that constantly with like 3-4 year intervals where I'll say something just happened and I realize like that thing that I thought was like my entire high school career. And it didn't just happen at all. It's like so long ago.
Yeah.
That's like an eternity in the mind of a kid.
It is, but there's nothing weirder than being separated through years and then seeing someone. You know what I mean? Like an ex who used to be with every day. Now you see, you have good feelings about each other.
Right.
But you don't have those same feelings. You're like, oh, it was really nice seeing her. Instead of, how fucking crazy is it that you cared so much about a person, and now you're like, what? You got kids? 6? It's a lot of kids.
Well, that's just great for you.
Yeah. Well, this was wonderful. Was it? Or are you just fucking secretly freaked out?
We should totally do this again.
Never. Facebook me, because I'm not on there. I'm not on one social media where I can be reached like that.
No, you're completely unreachable.
I'm off grid.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Chris Stanley, you're an off grid guy, right?
Yeah, I don't have any. I don't have.
Well, no, here's the thing. You started all of them, and then they just lay and rot for years.
Yeah, there's a MySpace out there with me on it.
Yeah.
I don't know the password.
Last post it forever. You don't even know the fucking password to your Gmail. He wants to get another. He wants to, change his name, but he has no idea how to do it because people will just send it back to Chris Stanley.
What was MySpace your first social media?
I think so. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, no, I had a
LinkedIn account.
That came after MySpace, but Friendster. I think I was on Friendster in college.
That's hilarious.
It was popular on the campus of SUNY Purchase.
You just had Camplius.
Camplius.
All right. a little later on, this is the last day for any announcement about Big J Unmasked. Chris is going to start contacting people tonight. After Eddie, I want to get to a couple of these things like the giant alligator, which has the whole internet fighting. And then I want to ask you about Friend Zone, too.
Yes.
Yeah. Chris, I don't want to ask you about anything. You came in with the Chuck D and Rage thing 10 fucking weeks after it was announced.
I suck. Prophets of Rage, Ron. They're going to be huge this summer. I can't wait.
I can't wait either.
I wonder what Zach De La Roca's doing, though. Just curious.
No one knows.
He's probably in
I
South
could be
America.
the biggest fucking star in the world. Everyone thinks he's just down fighting against capitalists, but we don't know. All right, so Eddie Trunk's new show, and it's going to be a doozy, Reel to Reel, Tuesdays at 9 o'clock on Access TV. Go to access.tv, and Eddie's Trunk Live, Mondays, 6 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM, Channel 39, Trunk Nation. Eddie Trunk, buddy.
How are you guys?
Good to see you, my man.
Good to be here. This is my first time in this configuration with
is
Gail
that
and
right?
everything. Yeah.
This new...
I haven't been around on this show in a while.
Well, you know what? You're on the road constantly. I'm always
I have
hearing
been.
about you and being in bizarre places.
I was in Oklahoma last weekend. Is that bizarre?
That's weird enough for me. Now, you were out there for a rock show?
Yeah, I host a festival every Memorial Day weekend there, 10th year in a row for, it's called Rocklahoma. It's major. It's great.
Who was all there?
Some of the headliners were Rob Zombie, Disturbed, Five Finger Death Punch, Scorpions, about 50 other bands as well.
Is this a whole weekend deal?
Yeah, 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and in that area of the country, as many people know, weather can be a little bit dicey. Last year, the two headliners on Saturday didn't play because the weather can turn like that, and that was Volbeat and Linkin Park. And this year, no real weather issues. There was a little bit of a lightning thing. I had to clear the crowd for a minute, but basically that blew over, so we never had a problem, thankfully.
Well, here's the deal with Oklahoma. First, you got that kind of weather, and now the ground is giving out.
Earthquakes.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
And fracking.
You know, actually, I thought that was the case as well, and it's not. There was a story on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago that it's actually not due to fracking. I forget what they said it was from, something to do with energy and pulling stuff, but it's not because of fracking. They had another reason for it that they found out.
All right, I just found, here it is. It's the way they treated the Indians in the past.
Deserved.
Yeah. All right, your new show, it's a kind of rockumentary show.
It's a series of documentary films that were commissioned by Access TV, and it is a different one that will premiere the last Tuesday of every month. Mm-hmm. The first one premiered this past Tuesday and will repeat all this month, and it was the documentary on the making of Green Day's American Idiot. So the film's called Heart Like a Hand Grenade. And basically, I'm just hosting the series for them. So I come on at the top, set up the film, talk a little bit about it. I was able to write my own scripts and watch the film and talk about it. I come on in the middle, kind of like, hey, hope you liked the film. Did you know? And then I come on at the end and say, hope you liked the film, and here's some other things you may not know. So it was cool to be a part of. I shot everything already in LA a couple months ago, and it's just rolling out now.
That album was probably one of the last giant rock albums, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is it was at a really pivotal time because people thought that they were yesterday's news already. People were starting to think that Green Day was done because they had a couple records didn't do too well.
Yeah.
And here they are making this politically charged concept record, and it became their biggest record.
Yeah, that was bizarre the way they hung around like that and like came back bigger than ever.
Yeah.
I have little cousins who like got into Green Day, and I was thinking I was your same age when I was listening to Green Day. It was
Right.
a very weird thing that they were like the youth band at that point.
Your little cousin is kind of in a Green Day tribute band without a vocalist.
Right.
That's where they are. They're just.
I worked in a record store when Dookie came out, and it was mayhem. And yes, it was very little kids that were young kids that were buying that at the time. But what's funny in this documentary is that it's while they're making the record. So it takes place all in the studio while they're creating this record, and they don't know what's going to happen with it. And there's a part in the doc where Billy Joe actually says, well, listen, we'll see what happens with the record. I mean, it's not like it's going to go on to be some Broadway show or something. And of course it did. But they actually said that. He actually says that during the making of the film.
But that was a record, like you said, put him over the top. And then they could have a career like The Who. They'll just be able to tour forever and be big. It was whatever it was. There's certain records that, you know, whether you're Bon Jovi I mean, it's a rarefied place. But just like, okay, now it's set for you forever. Elton John has that kind of career. It's just, you don't have to.
AC/DC, Back in Black.
AC/DC. And if you look back, it's like the amount of hits that they had after that was fairly small.
Right.
You know, but all their radio songs kind of come from mid-'80s up until early 80s. But a career of, hey, 20,000 people will gladly go see them. Gladly.
Yeah.
At any given time.
You're right, though. Every band has that one record that is so massive that it's going to, I mean, look at the summer touring season with the Shed Acts. They're living off of that one record from 35, 40 years ago in a lot of cases. Those guys are all going out there doing that.
Here's a rock documentary I just caught the other day. It was a band I never was a fan of. Ended up fucking loving the documentary, and it's Twisted Fucking Sister.
Yeah.
Just when you see how long that band fought, how long they wanted it, how many times they should have fucking quit. It's amazing to see what people go through.
People think Twisted Sister started with "We're not going to take it" and "I want to rock." And being a guy that's lived in New Jersey my whole life, I knew I was too young to see Twisted Sister in the clubs because of the drinking age. But I had friends that did, and I heard the legend and heard the stories, but I never saw it. But I knew it existed. But that band started in the mid-'70s, and Ronnie, what was amazing was they were doing 3,000 to 4,000 people in clubs and couldn't get a record deal. And it's amazing what happened. And then when they got the deal and they had the huge hit, they imploded. That's where the next phase of the story goes. It was over as quick as it happened.
It's got that crazy Spinal Tap thing, you know what I mean? But it's real as shit. But you're looking at them, and they had started when there was glam, and they were still wearing the makeup after everyone had stopped. And then eventually people were like, hey, they're bringing back the makeup thing. But they weren't. They had just never stopped.
Yeah.
Documentaries are my favorite type of film. That's why when Access asked me to do this, I was really excited because documentaries are pretty much my favorite kind of movie overall. Mm-hmm. And obviously anything related to music, even if it's bands I don't like, I'll watch a documentary on them. I watched one on Swedish House Mafia. That's EDM. Right. I don't like EDM, but I'll watch it because it's a music doc and I'll learn something and I'll love it. So there's so many, and there's a ton of them now. I mean, every week I'm being asked to be interviewed. I just got it. Somebody came to my house last week, interviewed me for one that's going to come out on roadies and like the techs and the world of those guys. Every band is doing a doc. I think that a lot of the documentary craze in music was definitely inspired by the success of the film on Anvil, which is probably 5 years ago. But I think that got a lot of people thinking like, wow, maybe we can, there's a Quiet Riot one that's out there that's real good.
Loved it. I saw it and fucking loved it.
Yeah, and this series with Access that I'm doing, there's a new one every month. But what's cool about it, and what's cool about that project for me, is that every topic is different. Like this one's on Green Day. There's one on a classical piano player. There's one on a New York radio personality. There's one on a blues guitarist. There's all kinds of stuff.
Radio Unnameable is that one.
Bob Fass.
Yeah.
And I saw that in the theater. Gail and I have a very close person who worked on the documentary. And that was great for me to see a dude who had worked in radio for so long, and that when you get to a certain point and you hear the interviews over the years, you start to go, what a fucking life, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, what a life. And then I'm thinking, well, that's the same as me, you know, most of the guys that we're friends with, that when enough time gets together, you were around when different things happened.
Yeah, that documentary is so fantastic, and he's such an interesting character. Mostly just because he also keeps all of that. You know, he has all of these tapes, all these old tapes, and it's incredible.
Chris loses mine. Chris had a thing of 1,800 people who gave me like fucking props that just disappeared.
Oh
no, it's fun though.
When I saw that end like that, and I say this, when that airs on Access, I say, because the thing about these Access docs, this is the first time they're airing on any TV. Some of them have been around for a little while, as you've seen this. These are the TV premieres on all of them. But when I saw that end and that guy's archives and friends coming over and pulling him out and trying to help him out, I related to that because I was like, man, I wish I had a friend, because I just got done finishing my basement in my house, and I have bins of interviews because I'm 34 years into radio myself now. I have bins of just shit everywhere, just a mess, and like on DAT tape, on CD, on open reel, on cassette. I don't want to throw it out because it's gold, a lot of stuff. Guys that have died, amazing things.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, that's the thing, that sometimes you get to that point where either somebody has died or committed a horrendous crime, and suddenly that interview stands out as something that is totally different than when you heard it the first time.
And he has that kind of personality where you see he drew in so many interesting people, not just musicians, but like
people
even
that
his
were hanging around.
his listeners. I saw a premiere, or not the premiere, but a screening of it at BAM, and Bob Fast was there, and so his audience was there, like a lot of his crowd, and that was probably one of the most interesting, weird rooms I've ever been in.
Let me ask you guys this, and I'm curious because I'm a guy that grew up and has lived in the New York market my entire life. I had never heard of him before the documentary. Did you guys know of him before the doc?
I think I knew the name more than his career, because he did like a once a week thing by the time I got to New York. But it's NPR, so I'm sure, you know, we had to know people who probably worked with him towards the end of this.
I definitely, like, it was one of those things where I maybe heard his name, but I had no idea the depth of his career.
Because most of his stuff was going back to hanging with Abby Hoffman during the trials and shit like that.
Oh, yeah, and all the protest stories that happen are incredible in that. There's an amazing moment where he talks like a suicidal person through, which is like one of like the most wild scenes, I think.
Very interesting demeanor on the air. You know, he just, but I thought it was great. And what I liked about it too is that, is it talked about, it showed at a time the power of radio, the relationship that the audience had with radio.
Yeah, I came in Florida at the very end of that terrestrial thing where you could say, meet us here, and thousands of people would show up. You know, it was like one of the things about doing satellite. Oh, you talk to people all over, but you don't talk about local issues. So when you're like, hey, everyone go throw their fucking trash on the mayor's lawn, and then they do it, then the paper picks it up in the morning. You know, you're like really involved in a community at that point.
Totally. That was really revealing to see that.
Here's another one that I love. The Jason Becker was one that I saw, and that story I didn't really know. I didn't even know that David Lee Roth cut his albums that way. That was surprising to me.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Jason Becker, brilliant guitar player. In the early 80s, there were two rising star metal guitar players, Marty Friedman and Jason Becker. They'd done records together in a band called Cacophony, instrumental records, a couple of them. And then they were picked off. Marty Friedman was picked off by Megadeth to be their new guitarist and went on to make that band's classic records with them. And Becker, they were friends, of course. Becker was picked by David Lee Roth to replace Steve Vai. And they go into the recording studio and they start making the Roth record, A Little Ain't Enough. And Becker doesn't feel right and gets diagnosed with ALS and is given 6 months to live. And he's still alive today, and that's over 20 years ago. And his story is remarkable. He still makes music, kind of moving his eyeballs. We had him on that metal show via Skype, and he talked through a translator who read off the screen what he wrote. But incredibly inspirational. And what's amazing about that story to me is not only Becker and his desire to live and make music still, but the people that surround him and stuck by him, from girlfriends to family members who, the amount of work to take care of him every day, it really was a moving thing. It was crazy. It was really, really, and he's still alive today. As a matter of fact, when that doc comes up in this series, I reached out to Becker and told him that we were going to be airing it. It would be shown on TV for the first time. And he sent me a statement to read, which I read when that one
That's
airs.
really cool.
Yeah, he typed an email to me, and I was glad I was able to he was very happy it was going to be seen on TV and that he was able to contribute a fresh perspective.
But see, the thing that's stunning about that, you're saying like he makes music now just moving his eyes that they hooked up to the thing, which shows like as much as we all love music, we have no idea what these guys, that music comes into their head somehow. You know what I mean? That has nothing to do with how good their fingers are, whatever. Music shows up and then they attempt to translate that in whatever instrument or whatever they have. But that idea of hearing songs the way, let's say, Brian Wilson talks about hearing songs, it's like an alien to me.
Yeah.
An alien that you would just, and Brian, he'll hear these things in his head. And it's like, oh, all right, now how do I make it happen in the real world?
I've said many times that to me, the talent that I am most impressed by in all of music is the ability to write songs, the ability to write great songs. It's funny. I got into it a little bit last night. I was here. I stayed over in the city because last night I judged a battle of the bands for Johnny Hard Rock at the Hard Rock. And there, two bands played and both bands needed a lot of work in the song department. And I always get into it with Johnny because one of the criteria in the judging categories is never songs. It's performance,
right.
It's ability to play, it's crowd reaction. The number one criteria should be, how are your songs? And I run into this all the time. People come up to me and say, we really need to know what you think. Okay, do you really want to know?
Mm-hmm.
No, yes, we need to know. And then when you tell them, they get so pissed.
Right.
Well, most of them do. And then, you're shit talking us or whatever. You're dying for my opinion, and it doesn't jive with what you think you're doing. And then you're going to give me an attitude about it. And it happens constantly to me. I said to this one band last night, I go, I'm going to tell you something that all your friends are here and all your family and your closest buddies that grew up with you are not going to tell you. And here it is. And one guy took it really well. He's like, wow, I appreciate you doing that. And the other guy, he got his back up a little bit. And, I was like, look, you guys you wanted this, and I'm giving it to you.
Well, the truth is, there's probably an unbelievable guitar player playing tonight at the Kansas City Ramada, some great drummer playing in a wedding band. But that songwriter thing is the mystery. The song that gets people, that hooks into other people. There's great craft.
You could go to L.A. right now and walk down Sunset Boulevard and stumble into 100 amazing guitar players or musicians.
Yeah.
Back in the day here in New York on 48th Street, that was Music Row. Mm-hmm. You could walk into any Sam Ash, Manny's, whatever, and be blown away by people's playing. But maybe 1/100th of those people could write a great song. So what do you do with it? Like these bands I saw last night, there was one band that had a female singer, amazing voice, but the songs were nothing.
Right.
So that's that to me is the key that makes it all go.
And that was the weird thing about American Idol, that they could get somebody that might be able to sing on a register like Freddie Mercury, but you were never going to get an original song that sounded like Queen.
Right. When you heard them using their instrument with someone else's great song, you're like, oh, this person's clearly a star. But unless that person is given a brilliant song.
Right.
And then you could be Adam Lambert and be on American Idol and ended up singing in Queen.
Well, that's the weird thing about it.
Queen now.
Yeah. He's in Queen because it's kind of a Queen revival show or something. It's closer to like a Broadway thing because they're not making music with him, right? They're not. Are they putting out albums with him?
I think they did. Well, they did a record of new music, I know, with Paul Rodgers, who was in before him. I don't know if they did one with Lambert or not, at least not yet. I'm not sure.
But see, Paul Rodgers, that's one of those interesting things. Great rock voice. And then he could write hooky songs. You know what I mean? He wrote the songs that people could sing along with. I mean, when you start to think about how many talents it actually takes before you're a rock star, it's really crazy.
It's a total package. And then, of course, you have the guys. It's okay if you have all the other intangibles. you can still get there if you want to go the route where you bring somebody else to write your songs and produce and shape you. But of course, the downside of that is that a lot of people don't have, their egos won't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And if you do let that happen, somebody else is going to be making just as much, if not more money than you, because they're going to own the publishing.
Sorry, Meatloaf, but he's talking about you right now.
Steinman.
Yeah, Steinman.
Yeah.
And maybe he'll give you the next hit song. Maybe he'll hand it off to someone else.
But the key is, though, Ronnie, is like, well, Steinman had his name on the records, and he was a little bit more of a parallel thing. But the residual effect for Meatloaf is that he can go on the road.
Right.
Everybody knows Meatloaf. Everybody wants a picture with Meatloaf. Everybody wants a Meatloaf T-shirt when they go to the show. And Steinman just, Steinman doesn't have that.
Wouldn't that be great, though, to
Celebrity
have
cachet.
all that, to be able to create it, to have the money, and then still be able to walk through a mall without people stopping you? You'd probably be willing to pay for that sometimes.
That would be Diane Warren, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, she doesn't even go to the mall, though. I saw a thing on her. She doesn't even leave the house.
Eddie Trunk is in studio with us. Reel to Reel airs Tuesdays at 9 p.m. East on Access TV. Go to accesstv.tv for more information. And Eddie Trunk Live airs Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Channel 39 Trunk Nation.
Here's one of the interesting ones, too, that he's doing. Who's Harry Nilsson, and why is everybody talking about him?
I love it.
Great
I love that.
and painful documentary to watch. Somebody who had all the tools and also an addiction. You know what I mean?
And also the thing that I find, talk about songwriting, guy wrote so many huge songs, but his song he's best known for, he didn't write. It was a cover. Badfinger, Without You. It's crazy to think about that.
I don't think he wrote Everybody's Talking to Me. I don't know if he wrote that or not, tell you the truth.
I don't remember because I watched it a little while ago, but I remember Without You, I was like, wow, this guy wrote all these songs.
He didn't write it. Fred Neil wrote it.
See, that's very weird.
Wow.
And he was a great songwriter. Probably the only cartoon movie musical that I really love is The Point.
Yeah, and that album is just so fantastic. I mean, the music
man.
in that is phenomenal.
Ringo doing the voiceover for it. It's just great.
And the other thing about Harry Nilsson was that's kind of timely and ties into what's current stuff is the fact that Alice Cooper is doing this Hollywood Vampires thing now.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know that backstory, that was a drinking club that Alice Cooper had in the late 60s and early 70s. And it was him, it was John Lennon, it was all these guys. And Harry Nilsson was a part of that. And on the Hollywood Vampires album that came out last year, there are a couple Nilsson songs that Alice Cooper covers as a nod to that sort of club. But he was completely part of that whole.
Oh yeah,
fraternity.
he was a madman.
I mean, the Beatles. I mean, Ringo and Lennon just absolutely loved the guy.
And the Cooper, did you ever see that documentary where I think is it Super Duper
Yes.
Alice Cooper? Is that the name?
Yes.
It's fucking unbelievable too. And there is a scene in that at the Hollywood Bowl where he just leans over and starts making out with a girl that's so uncomfortably young that it just makes you wonder what the 70s were. I mean, so young that I was just screaming, no!
Well, Nugent abducted like a 14-year-old and had her parents sign the kid over to him.
Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy stuff that went on. Speaking of Alice, there's the doc that's even better that's related to Alice, I think, is the one on his manager.
Yeah, I had him in.
Shep Gordon, Supermensch. Yeah, that's great as well.
That's a guy who is one of those guys who can just be everywhere that you're supposed to be. I think he still manages Alice too.
He does.
And that's a long haul to be with the same person, like since 72 or whatever. By the way, the early Alice Cooper stuff, when it was the band Alice Cooper more than just the person, I still think that's really great rock and roll.
Yeah.
Then he got big with the other, having other people write and come in and produce. He just didn't want to be, I don't know if he wanted to share or they were just partying too much and you couldn't have the whole band party like that. But it did kind of remind me of Axl, where with the early Guns N' Roses days were so different from after they got famous.
ultimately what happens with just about any major band or any band at that for that matter is that after a member leaves or two members leave, the bands all start out all for one for all. Most of them start out as equal members. But then as soon as one or two guys leave over time, then it completely changes the dynamic, because then the two guys that were there from the beginning, they take over ownership of the band. Whoever's coming in is going to be hired guns. So that's why there's such a cachet to the very, very few bands out there that are still running with their original lineups, because it's extremely rare that you have these bands that literally are one for all for one, the way they started.
Right.
The ones that come to mind are Rush, who, even though there was a different drummer on the first record, 40 plus years for Rush, the same three guys, the same manager, the same structure. That's unheard of. And Aerosmith, even though they're fairly dysfunctional, they are still the same five guys that started it.
They're also kind of dysfunctional because the rhythm section will sit around and go, the singer's a dick. And you won't see that.
Totally.
You know, and that's because they all grew up together and they all shared in this. But you won't normally see someone who has the balls to say the lead singer or lead guitar player are being assholes.
Yeah.
But those guys are very comfortable just being surly, you know, because they have no idea what it's like to be that guy for hire, you know. Well, you did a thing on Levon Helm, and Levon's, I remember saying before, is that all companies are out to break up the band as soon as it happens. They immediately want to go, where do we grab what we think is the creative part of this? And one of the things that he brought up is Elvis. If you hear the initial thing, it was a band playing together. And they separated Elvis from those guys, and it became a totally different sound. You know, that whole rockabilly sound. Very, very short in Elvis's career.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the Levon Helm documentary. I have never seen it before.
It's kind of sad in a lot of places,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it is, because he's trying to make this record and trying to come back to some degree, and the struggles he has trying to make the record and his health problems, or you see him going to the doctor and dealing with that sort of stuff. But what's really cool in that film is that his ranch or farm or whatever it is that he had in Woodstock, it just was open season. Anybody would be dropping by. There's a part in that film. There's a part in that film where it's Billy Bob Thornton is sitting in there and all these guys, and it's just like they don't even reference in the movie that guy's that they're there, because that was just the stuff that surrounded them. And you're right, they are still having those events.
Those rambles that you could pull up, they would have a place for the park. Everybody went up to Levon's house, into the barn, same places that he would record and stuff. And then you would go, and it's Levon fucking Helm, right? But then you didn't know anybody could have come walking out and just started playing guitar with him. Some of the greatest people ever, because they loved that sound and they loved Levon.
And that's the thing where, isn't it a point where he says something like he's pissed off at Robbie Robertson because of publishing, right?
Well, here's the thing when we were talking about songwriting. And if you go back all these years, he bitched about it. Because Robbie would bring in a song, right? And most of the time it seems like when someone writes a song, it sounds like a James Taylor song or a Paul Simon song. And then the rest of the band comes in and adds what's natural to it. The Doors said, okay, that thing makes us the Doors. Everybody gets a piece of it. But in the case of that, the songs without the people in that band would have sounded incredibly different, you know? But the songwriter is the guy who says, here's the melody, here's the lyrics. That's like a legal thing. You know, if you add something amazing that most of us might know the song by, it doesn't count as songwriting. Like some arranging or producing or something.
But it causes a lot of heat with people because, well, in the case of Levon Helm, hey, my drum patterns, I wrote that stuff. That's what I came into. I think it was, forget who it was just recently, Bill Ward maybe, because he's had this huge falling out with Black Sabbath, and he's like, hey, my drum patterns and those are my things. That should be considered part of songwriting. And that's a big head butter with a lot of guys.
But, you know, this is something that they set up like in the 1930s or something. So when you go into court over that kind of stuff, they'll say, no, it's not songwriting. But if you go back and look, a lot of studio musicians added things that we know, right?
Yeah.
That you know, if you go back and listen to old Motown hits, bum 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 bum, that's not part of the original fucking song. The entire world knows when that thing hits what the song is. Everybody's
Right.
like, "Oh, turn this shit up." That doesn't fucking count.
And there's a lot of producers that when they're making the record come up with ideas and arrangements and change things. So they could stake claim and say, hey, I had something to do with the way that sounds.
Well, the producer's credit gets you money, right?
It depends upon the deal. If you just do a flat buyout and whatever, or sometimes the producer will take less in exchange for some points on the record.
Yeah.
So it depends upon the deal that was made. But that, I don't think fans understand that enough, is that the way a band's business is set up plays so hugely into the potential for their longevity. If you're set up where if you've got 4 guys in the band and everybody, regardless of who writes or what, gets a quarter, songs, sales, merchandise, which is huge, everybody gets the same no matter who writes it, that band may last 30, 40 years. But the minute somebody leaves and the pendulum swings all the way and it's one guy running the show, you mentioned the Twisted Sister documentary earlier. There's a moment in that film where Dee says he took a song to J.J. French. People don't know about Dee Snider's the star of Twisted Sister. Nobody will argue that. J.J. French actually is the founding member of the band and owns the band. And Dee brought a song to him when they were trying to get original stuff going, and JJ was dismissive of it and said, it's shit, who cares, or whatever. And in the doc, Dee says that inspired him to go back and I'm going to write every song this band ever does. And he did. For Twisted Sister, every single one of their songs, Dee Snider is the sole songwriter. So it's great because they had success with them. But the flip side of that is that you have a band selling millions of records and only one guy was making any money because Dee had all the publishing, which led to it imploding like a year or two later. So the way that business is set up, I asked Eddie Lee once, I said, how is it possible? 45 years, the same 3 guys. You never hear of drama. He said, we never let things get heavy. We're 3 guys. It's a third across the board. We're all happy. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, but also it sometimes you think if a guy's broke, it might keep him from walking away from the band. You know, there's a lot of times that they're just like, I gotta play. I'm fucking exhausted. But I have to keep playing.
Just give him a little cracker just to keep him on the hook.
Yeah, just enough.
A nibble.
Yeah.
Let him wet his beak.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we're talking about two of bringing stuff around. George Harrison couldn't get he would get like 1 or maybe 2 songs on every album. And the second he gets out of the Beatles, just writes this classic album, this double album, that all this shit that he couldn't get into the Beatles.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, I don't know, George, this shit, it's kind of weird.
What do you think Ringo was dealing with?
Ringo seems to be the happiest guy I've ever seen.
But he went, his solo thing, he had hits. You know, would think he's going to have hits.
Yeah, he had probably more number 1 hits in the 70s than any of them.
I think statistically you may be right, because I heard that stat and I was like, really?
Yeah.
And people forget that what he did. It's the drummer. It reminds me of being a big Kiss fan when the 4 of them all did solo records in 78.
Yeah.
And Ace was the fuck up, and Ace was and only sang 1 song on a record in his life at that point. And who's going to care about Ace Frehley's solo record? It outsold all of them. It was the only one that had a hit, New York Groove, that still gets played.
Still gets played. Still gets cranked up every time. You can't walk through Central Park and the roller skaters have it on, and it was no fucking.
There's not a New York sports team that doesn't win that they don't play it after they win.
It's so funny. Well, Phil Collins was a drummer who got bigger than he wasn't even a singing drummer like Don Henley. And then he got all the hits.
So he didn't sing anything with them?
No, not when they had Peter Gabriel.
Right.
They were just like, we got fucking Peter Gabriel.
We're fine.
Yeah. And then when he left, they were like, can anybody else sing? And Phil's like, well, I sang a little, you know. And then he started songwriting shit. You just never know. You know, well, it was very weird to think what songs or what groups would be a hit in any decade, or what songs and what groups. It only worked for that period of time.
And Phil Collins, going back to Phil Collins for a second, maybe the most unlikely looking star of MTV.
Yeah.
Like, those videos ruled on MTV. He was all over MTV. And in a day where everybody was pretty and glammed up, Here you got this small, bald man just ruling MTV.
And did a close-up on every
record
album.
was a big photo of his face sweating.
Just his head. Just like zoomed in on his bald head.
I worked in a record store. It was a different profile of his head on every album cover. Like, what was...
Yeah, now he's doing...
He's not Brad Pitt.
No, now he's doing a thing where he does his... He reshoots those today,
really?
yeah.
Yeah,
and
so he...
lines them up against the others. So he's reshot them all.
Well, I give him credit for that. He's having some fun with it.
The funny thing is he's kind of looks better now because he's like a more interesting face.
I think he's kind of aged into his looks.
He's trying to make a comeback. He's going to start doing music again, I was told.
I'm sure that the audience is there for him. I'm sure because that was a ton of hits that he had during the 80s.
That's crazy. I'm just looking at the images.
Hilarious, right?
Yeah, I didn't know he did that. That's funny. It's actually he's done pretty well. He doesn't look all that. It's not that.
Yeah, for a guy who's actually been sick too. I mean, there was a long period. I think he had some kind of physical problems.
Yeah, because that's 30 years age difference on most of those pictures. So.
I really do think he looks better. I think he's like got a more interesting look.
Yeah.
There's a case to be made that if you had lost your hair 30 years ago, you can still pull it off now.
Yeah.
It still works.
Yeah.
Like if you had a full head of hair on the early records, you'd be like, holy shit, the guy's bald.
Well, no one's thinning hair. It doesn't bother anybody but the person. You know what I mean? Like to everyone else, you're like, he looks fine. And as soon as it starts happening, you're like,
life is over.
Fuck life. See, I had friends. It was always mean when some guys would start to lose it in their early 20s and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm 51 and mine's starting to go. I got the 5 head going. And it's like, well, the way I look at it is like, I had friends in high school that were losing it.
I had a friend in high school who was like bald.
Right.
Like he was like really bald in high school.
But isn't it funny? It's like if David Tell starts bringing it up, you're like, oh, yeah, you're right. You are losing your hair. But to him, he's just like doing a long set of how freaked out and how pissed off he is about it. Hilarious. What's your favorite, Gail, all-time rock documentary?
It could be Dig.
That's a great one. Have you ever seen that with Brian's Jonestown Massacre?
No.
Dandy
I
Warhols.
think so.
Dandy Warhols.
Yeah.
It's this mid-90s, just complete weird meltdown of... And I don't know why they had so much... Neither one of them had hits.
Right. I mean,
why
they had
people
like...
following them
Dandy
constantly.
Warhols had like maybe 1 or 2 kind of MTV level hits, not
But
big
they were
radio
following them for years before they made those.
It makes no sense
But
that they
it
were able to
comes-
capture that.
It really comes from the fact that the lead singer of the Brian Jonestown Massacre, Anton Newcomb, I think, is just an insane character.
Right.
And I think he was just so electric that people must have just been like, I'm just going to put a camera on this guy because he's so bizarre.
Well,
I haven't watched it in years, but I remember
it's
just
great.
like...
Anytime you
just
watch it,
good.
it's just as good.
It's
Every
yeah,
single
I
time.
remember
They're
just...
so crazy.
They're so incredibly insane.
Mine is Don't Look Back, Dylan, which is maybe the one that set it up. Who's the guy who did it? It's we had him on the show years ago, but he's the guy that kind of
D.A. Pennebaker.
D.A. Pennebaker kind of invented the rock documentary, and the fucking cameras were just gigantic then. It was like following him around with a telephone book. But that's the Dylan in the 60s, almost before everything felt famous,
Yeah.
where you would still just be riding around in a car and going to gigs. And it was almost like he was like a writer more than a star. What about for you, Chris?
I was never a big Metallica fan, but Some Kind of Monster was pretty mind-blowing.
Fucking great.
Yeah, and another one that I really think inspired this whole movement of these, especially in the rock and metal world, really set people
And I was
off.
screaming at that movie like, the fuck are you guys doing? Like, you guys are asshole. And then it ends with them on stage, and I go, fuck, that's right, they're Metallica.
Yeah.
I just felt like I was watching a reality TV show, like they were just like, why are you bitching at each other? And then at the end of it, where you just see just fucking 80,000 fans going crazy, and I'm like, oh, that's right. These fucking assholes who whined about everything are Metallica.
Yeah.
There's this Green Day doc and Heart Like a Hand Grenade. I was doing some of the research on it, and they were concerned when their film was being the making of that album, American Idiot, and that documentary was being filmed at the same time that Metallica was making their documentary, or the Metallica doc had just come out while Green Day was making that documentary and the cameras were rolling. And Green Day had seen the Metallica doc just when it came out, and they were like, oh shit, our thing's going to be like, we have zero drama going on.
Right.
Our documentary is going to look completely out and out boring by contrast to this film that just came out from Metallica.
Metallica just gutted themselves, and they didn't care who looked bad or who looked whiny.
And those are the best documentaries. Yeah. The most revealing and pull away the curtain to let it fly. The Quiet Riot one, that's what was so good about them. Yeah. You saw them playing in practically VFW halls.
Right.
You saw them berating the guy for forgetting the lyrics. I mean, I could have
killed that fucking guy.
You really have to be willing to pull back the curtain.
But that's another thing that everyone always says, oh, the band should have quit here, or that was the time that they should have walked away being myths. But there's something really great about a dude who's in his 60s and he's dyeing his hair black, and he's like, I want to be a fucking drummer for Quiet Riot. I don't give a fuck what I got to do, you know?
Well, the drummer's the only original guy, so that was the one spot they weren't filling.
Yeah.
Because he was Frankie Wren is the one guy from the band, but
to not want to let go of that thing that you love to do, you know? And like you said, if he would have brought up 33 years ago, you'd still be doing radio, and you'd be like, no fucking way is that going to happen, you know? But it does happen with people, you know?
Yeah.
You gotta trudge through the shit. You gotta roll stuff off your back. You gotta keep pushing.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta stop forgetting about, you gotta remember the reasons why you did it, because of the passion and how much you love doing it, because there's not always going to be money. There's not always but at the end of the day, you're doing what you love.
It is true that if you just are results driven, you will never be happy. You know what I mean? It'll never be enough. You have to like what you're doing despite what the results.
You'll bitch to your friends and your coworkers, but you'll still keep doing it.
Well, that actually is what I'm going to write on your tombstone.
I shouldn't say I will. Back to NEW. If I saw Earl last night at the Hard Rock, I got him. I was, son of a bitch, at that other place.
Still pissed?
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Great to see you, man.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you guys.
Real to Real airs Tuesdays at 9 p.m. East on Axis TV. Go to axis.tv for more information. Eddie Trunk Live airs Mondays at 6 p.m. East on SiriusXM Channel 39. Trunk Nation. For more information, go to eddietrunk.com.
See you next time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Man, we never have like any of our own parody songs or anything ever to come back with. You ever notice that?
I know. We have so many.
And yet we never do it. Why is that, Chris?
Because I don't tell Joe to play them.
Oh. You have a list of like
Joe
great
has a
songs
list.
that he's done?
Joe has a list.
But no one looks at them during the show?
I don't have the list in front of me.
Well, then what good's a list? You know?
I know.
I mean, he writes a lot of good songs. Let's play them every once in a while.
He's a talented young man.
Is it hot in here? Did we change the...
It was up when I walked back in. I put it back down. So it was the...
Who put it up?
I don't know. Possibly Vito, because we had a guest in.
I did it.
Oh, did you? Were you cold?
Just for a second.
Yeah.
I forgot to put it back.
Yeah, you're killing us.
But I only put it up a couple degrees. It's so cold.
No, it's a sweatshop in here
I
now.
feel disgusting.
I feel like this is the movie Eastern Promises, and I'm getting in it, I'm trying to sweat it out, and then two fucking guys from Ukraine come in and start stabbing me with weirdly shaped knives.
This fucking knife fight's about to freak out.
You guys like it cold.
Yeah. You ever see Eastern Promises?
Mm-mm.
Write it down.
Eastern
Watch it.
Promises.
It's not a rockumentary, so I don't know if Eddie Trunk would like it.
No, he won't. That's all me and Eddie Trunk like to talk about.
I would love to do a music show, but you never play songs, you just talk about music. And have it go on every day for 4 hours.
Well, my original idea for a GPS was just us singing over the music really loudly.
I like that.
And the folks at Deep Tracks didn't love it.
They weren't crazy about it?
They weren't crazy about it, but they did just let us go ahead and do GPS.
Remember when we had a song picked out for Eddie to come into and we thought it was funny?
Yeah.
Did that not get written down on the list either?
I didn't write that down, no. That was
Remember
my
what the
problem.
song was?
For those about to rock, we salute you.
And remember how you said, "Oh fuck, that's great. We'll do it."
Yeah.
You didn't tell Joe?
I didn't tell Joe. I fucked it up.
At one point, you came over and just stood in between us. Why did you do that?
That was a fish barge situation.
What are we going to do to take some of the pressure off of you? The pressure of performing.
I just have to give more things to Joe. Better communication between Joe and
Joe
myself.
will not do them. Joe's timid.
Then to Vito.
He just that quickly it became about Vito. Vito, you just moved up into the jump seat. Go ahead, jump into the jump seat. That's your place now. Joe, you'll go out and get lunch, whatever you want to do.
No.
You're fine. I know.
He should be screening calls then if he's not in that seat.
I'm not taking any calls.
Once it is.
Wow, he looks comfortable.
I know,
there.
he looks great.
You look really comfortable and confident.
Feels really good in here.
All right. So I'm going to start bringing up songs and things that you should be going to real quick.
You got it.
All right. I love it. Hope most of them be Springsteen today.
Throw him a couple of softballs. To start.
Sure, I will. Let's face it. This kid's just growing up. Right, Vito? Now
just growing up.
The internet is fighting about the giant alligator, whether it exists or not. It's up on the iBank today, but I don't know if I believe. But here's another thing: we got to get to that summer list too.
Yes,
but we've been crazy busy. We got Duncan Trussell coming in a little bit.
Yes, we do. But yeah, I would love to get to the wonderful summer reading list that Larry and Lori from Yonkers put together.
Now look at the size of this thing.
No.
You don't think it's real?
No.
I know it's a bigger alligator than I've seen anywhere, including captivity.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of gators in my day.
I know you have.
I have seen a lot of gators. The size of this thing, if you look to scale for how far away it is to where that man is, that would be absolutely insane.
Now, what else could it be, though?
I don't think it's...
Is this
I think,
CGI?
I think
No
it
way.
is...
This is a real gator.
Look, there's something about it, and I can't quite explain it, but there's something that is just a little bit
it's moving too methodical. It's moving too fast for a gator.
It's moving. First of all, if you see a gator in the wild, you're lucky if you see it move a foot or two, unless it is like in attack mode. That's a long distance. That
I know,
gator
that's like
just
a gator
walked.
going away for a weekend.
Yeah, like they like to just chill out. They don't like to be walking around that much. And then there's something that is just a little too Cloverfieldy about it. Like I'm looking
Yeah, so
at it,
just bringing it up from yesterday.
and it's just looking so, it's just like a haze about it that I don't think it's real.
Why would it go up again today? Well, they're still fighting about it. That's the fucking point.
Look at the sun reflecting off its tail. This is and the shadow of the gator itself. This gator is real. This ain't CGI.
I don't know. I don't think it's real. Only because of size, and you don't see a gator go that long. They're either doing one thing, they're laying there like a suitcase, or they're fucking taking off fast.
Yeah.
You never see them methodically walking. Like, they can dart. They'll start moving like a snake.
Oh, it's
But
crazy.
you never just see them taking a fucking stroll like this.
I think this gator's so big it can't dart. I mean, this is a abnormally large gator that's been caught.
How do you
on
know?
screen.
You've never seen a gator in your life.
I mean,
Yesterday, you said that the fucking gorillas are good babysitters.
Yeah. This is
Oh,
a
and
person.
again, you're taking the contrarian fucking view, aren't you?
This is a person who's never seen a robin.
He's never seen a robin redbreast.
Nope. I believe in this gator.
You know, it's like, I know what Vito's going through right now, growing up and all.
Yeah.
But now he's come back to it for the second time. He still never found it. And all that
Jesus
time,
Christ.
I thought that he had found it, and I was giving him the opportunity to cue it up.
Look, the distance more than the speed is the issue with this gator. I've never seen a gator walk that much. I've seen a gator just sit and chill, and I've seen a huge gator sitting in the water in this pond and go from 0 to 60 like nothing. It was insane. And it was massive. But
As big as this gator?
no, I don't think any gator's as big as that gator. I don't even know what, like, it's hard to say because it's supposed to be like behind this little hill on this golf course. It doesn't make sense to me. It's too big. That looks like it would be like a 12-foot long gator.
I think it's long. I think it would be longer since of the distance from the actual camera shot.
Then it can't be.
So how long are you saying it is? 18, 20 feet?
I'm saying at least 16 feet is what I'm saying. Possibly 20.
That's insane.
Look at the size. I mean, that fucking gator's huge. And it keeps going farther away from the camera, and it's still huge.
Let me bring up something else. Do you ever watch something like this where they put the guy in for perspective? Because they did. And this other dude, how come we're not seeing his video?
It just probably hasn't been found online yet. That's all. Or maybe he saw that this guy posted, so he didn't decide.
Oh, my God. You're just doing the contrarian.
There's no way it's real. I think they did it very good.
He's had it for an hour. We've been talking about it. All right. Forget what else I wanted to talk about today.
You wanted to talk about the friend zone. Was the other thing you brought up to me.
Yeah. There's a thing up about the friend zone. And the friend zone, to me, first of all, I've only heard it used by dudes.
Yes.
And the whole point is to pretend that you are a friend with a woman for 3 years, and then hopefully she'll be drunk and starts making out with you.
Right. When she's vulnerable or sad, you've slow played her into thinking you have a friendship. It's a very weird thing. I can't remember. It was like a few years ago. It just started to pop up where everybody started to use this term, and I felt like an old lady because I was like, "What's wrong with having friends? Like friend zone sounds like a nice place
but
to be."
All women acted like. So this is what's happening when you have a girl friend. And she hangs around with a guy, right?
Yeah.
The fucking boyfriend would be like, come on, you know what he's interested in. The girl will fight and fight and fight. No, we're just friends.
Yeah.
The friend zone fucking shows that whole thing is a lie, even if the girl doesn't know it.
Yeah, even if they don't realize it. And when you think about it, they're the only person who's being false. The guy is being false. So if somebody says, I have feelings for you and I can't be friends with you, I can only be intimate with you. I don't want a friendship with you. I think most women would go, well, that's not okay.
You mean right up front?
Yeah. If a guy acted like
that's why he doesn't say that.
Yeah.
That's why he doesn't say that at all, because he does not want to be shot down. So he thinks, I see Vito leaning forward. Are you a friend zone guy?
No, like, if I get into the friend zone,
Why are you just throwing quotes at us?
There were air quotes.
We know
for the listening audience.
First of all, we know what it means. We were just bringing it up.
We're not saying it ironically.
You don't have to air quote us.
I think you could break out of the friend zone. I don't think it's a dead end zone.
All right, I like that.
You're taking it to the bone zone is where you're trying to take it.
Here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with being in the end zone. That's where you want to be. But this is the thing about friend zone. First of all, the guy hangs around for 3 years. Then 3 years into it, she's drunk. He makes his move. She says no. Then he goes, what a fucking bitch. Do you know how many things I've done for this fucking girl?
Well, yeah, this is the crazy thing. Friendships sometimes evolve into relationships. It's a thing that happens. Sometimes you meet someone, you don't realize, you get to know them better, and that's where the attraction comes from. However, if a woman was just like slow playing it, where she had the attraction immediately, and then just tried to make you think that she liked your friendship, it's a very weird thing.
I know that I get it, but look at the blank look on Vito's face. He doesn't care about what you're saying.
So the friend zone, the friend zone could be a place where everyone is friends, but you have to leave there together. It can't be this sneaky thing.
I know.
Where
it's
you're
only
saying,
sneaky.
This bitch put me in the friend zone. because she's so nice to me and she has interest in my life.
Stupid bitch.
But women don't need to play the friend zone. Women can just, like, most women could just say to most men, like, hey, I'm into it. Are you into it?
Exactly. So that is the exact reason why when men say men can't be friends, that if any male friend that I have.
Let's play this game. So maybe this will sink through to you, Vito. You and your buddy, right? You're going out to clubs, you're hanging out, you're going to ball games, you're going to movies. 3 years into this, you're drunk one night, and he attempts to kiss you. And he says, for the last 3 years, I have been in love with you. You can't see this? You would think that you lived a lie for 3 years. That this person lied to you for 3 years. Am I correct?
I'd be really flattered that he wanted me that badly, but yeah, I'd be like, hey, man, I wanted one thing from this, and you wanted a whole other thing.
Yes.
Not only did you want it, but you lived it. You lived a lie without even knowing it because you didn't know that you're with someone who desired you and was jerking off thinking about you at night and going through your fucking giant Vito panties and fucking sniffing them, you know? Fucking going into your shower and looking for pubes. You had no fucking idea this. So you wouldn't just be like, hey, no, it's not that way with me. You'd be like, what the fuck, man? Why wouldn't you fucking say something like this early on? So we never had any boundaries?
I think I'd still be friends with him, though, after that.
The fucking dude wouldn't want to be friends after that.
That's the point.
Now you're the fucking cock tease.
That's what
women never want to get rid of the friendship.
Yes, this is the exact, like what you said, I'd still want to be friends. That's how women feel. They're like, oh, okay, I don't feel that way. Can we continue to have this relationship? And then the guy is like, no, this has always been false. So you can't continue without, like, he's not going to go, oh, okay, sorry, I did feel this way all this time. But now I see that you don't like me. I can completely shut that off.
So then I got to go out and find a new best friend?
Exactly.
Yeah, because that shit's over. You're used. Used to that person's sick desires.
I think I can make it work. I would just keep giving them little treats.
Chris, you were in the friend zone with your chick, right?
We were friends and she was with another dude, yeah.
Now, were you thinking all that time?
Off and on, because I was in a relationship too at the time.
With a dude? Same dude?
Woman, actually.
That's odd.
Fun fact, I was with the woman. But then after she broke up with that guy, I was like friend zoned for a little while, but then it turned into a relationship.
But you wanted to be.
I wanted to be in a relationship.
But is that the way it was? You wanted something, she didn't think of you that way, or was it
why would anyone think of him that way?
Oh, no, of course not, no. I put the work in, you know?
What kind of work?
Alcohol.
Oh, God.
So you got her drunk, she passed out.
No one passed out.
And then date rape.
There was no date rape.
That's how it began, huh?
No.
That's only because there was no date. Why is that funny?
These are all lies.
He laughs at rape.
Yeah, I know. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we rest. Please make him guilty. See you guys in about, 15 minutes?
Make this son of a bitch guilty.
What's going on this trial?
As guilty as you know he is.
And tonight we eat sushi. Am I right? Anybody have any allergies at all before I make the reservation?
This isn't fair.
This guy's going to take us out if we just say guilty now.
Or someone thinking Mexican. Tex-Mex? Do you guys even want to go in another room or just yell out guilty now on 3? 1, 2.
Talk about this. One of you's got enough.
So you were a friend zone guy.
So
for a little while, yeah. It was a short friend zone, but it was friend zone definitely.
Were you angry? Were you frustrated in the friend zone?
No, because I was just
He didn't put in years.
Yeah, exactly. If I put in years, then that fucking
Let's call her now and check. See what she thinks about it.
Police is at work.
Really? Bud?
1:30.
Let's call all
on
of
a
your
Thursday?
Let's call all of your old friends.
I'm taking any calls.
None of them?
No.
How do you know? You haven't even tried.
They're not a fan of me.
You know what it seems like?
What's that?
Like you went to to Vietnam and then you were a deserter for everybody to be mad at you. You had to do something so horrific.
Fucking AWOL right now.
Are you still hanging out with the top 40 crew because you don't drink now?
Yeah, no, I'll go and drink club sodas sometimes. It's
such a weird
fucking
pattern.
I feel fucking weird, Ron.
Yeah.
I'm not smoking.
You're acting weird.
And you know what? I don't know why this city charges $4 for a fucking club soda. That's ridiculous.
Well, their rent is enormous, and a lot of you assholes will just bring in some slow gen fizz and try to fucking drink it out of your coat.
I love every reference to slow gin fizz.
Let's face it. We're all growing up right now. Am I right, guys? You know? There it is. He's got it!
Well, I stood stone like at midnight, suspended in my masquerade.
Yeah, bring it down. I think after the show, you're just going to see Vito on the phone with his mom, and he'll be like this. I think I just might be able to do this job.
And on the third time he said it.
Could you tap out with Joe? Because he's in the fucking weeds for some reason. The phones are just fucking ringing.
Joe is in the lobby right now.
So you can't leave the fucking phones alone, dude.
Jump on it.
Kemosabe, jump on it.
And play that song once the phones are taken care of.
What song?
Jump on it.
Oh, he'll never get to that. But why does he let Joe just run off for an hour? Why are you eating mints during this show? I'm crunching mints. You're just crunching mints.
Okay, that was worse. He spit it into his hand.
Where else am I going to spit it, Gail?
You know where.
Your butt.
How did he not know that you can't leave the phones alone? He's been the phone guy all the time.
He's like, not my problem anymore.
He's left.
That's below me.
Yeah, below me is what he fucking just said to me, basically. All right, here is Matt. Matt in all these fucking Matt in Connecticut. You're on, buddy.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Cool.
So what I've found is the worst thing about being in the friend zone is that if you're friends with a girl that you really want to bang, but you're stuck there, she then goes and tells you about all the guys that she's sleeping with, all the guys she's banging.
Why
Because she
wouldn't
thinks
she?
you're friends, because that's what she does with her friends. That's what she does.
Because they think it's a legitimate friendship.
She believes you is basically what's going on.
She's not a liar.
I would rather sleep with her than have her trust me like that.
Then why don't you say that? You just called him a scumbag. You honestly believe that? It's weird, right?
It's a very strange thing.
But it's weird the way even guys will be like, fucking friend zone. Am I right, boys?
Friend zone me.
Here's Peter, Mississippi. Yeah.
All right, now, the guy thinks the girl is in the friend zone, but the girl is no Pollyanna. She has him in the bullpen as a backup and a way to leverage her boyfriend against the guy who's in the bullpen.
Wait, hold on. They friend zone people with boyfriends? I thought we were just talking about two single people.
I don't. Well, sometimes guys are working against the other boyfriend.
Yeah.
Where they're doing that. You know something? He's no good for you. You need someone about 5'11" and a half with dirty blonde hair.
I thought I was safe.
No.
No,
but
not at
here's
all.
the thing. If he's in the bullpen, right? He sure as fuck ain't a closer, right? So one thing that you got to do, you go in the bullpen to stay in the bigs, you got to know your role. And you can't be bitching because you're in the fucking bullpen. That's it.
Your lifestyle is just middle inning relief at the best. And they're not even getting that kind of action.
I don't know what that part meant. Hey, Ted, Providence.
Hey, guys. It seems like a really dude bro thing to say. Like, I'm in the friend zone, as if, like, it's not worth having a friend if I can't ejaculate in them. Like, it's so bizarre. Like, I have a friend who I met because she's beautiful, and I would have liked to date her, and we hung out, and it turned out we didn't have that kind of chemistry, meaning she didn't like me that way. But we're friends. And now she's friends with my wife, and I'm friends with her boyfriend, and it's like a whole wonderful thing that would not have happened if I had been like, fuck this bitch.
Right. Well, you can end up having friends in your life for a long time. Sometimes they're exes, or sometimes they're one-night dates that didn't work out. You both realize.
I also know that, like, people end up getting crushes on friends. That happens. But this is a different circumstance.
That's Vito with Hicks.
Right, exactly.
Oh, no.
So something like that where, maybe you're not going to act on it. You're not going to put any pressure on Chris. But you just, like, think about him so fondly.
It's a small office, and we're in there so close to each other.
It's a small orifice, still, when you think about it.
Chris's?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Who do you think, which one of you is the top and which is the bottom, if you guys did? Because you're wearing almost matching T-shirts again. I mean, it's fucking creepy. Your beard's at the same spot. Chris actually started cutting his hair like Vito.
No, other way around.
No, Vito's hair
Vito
was
got
that
a nice
way.
boy's haircut, then you got one too.
I'm the top in this situation.
No way.
Even though I'm the smaller man here.
Here's the reason I don't think you should be in the top.
What?
We can't count on your hard-ons. They're not automatic for the people.
I'm going to say that I see Vito as the top for the reason that Chris Stanley, in his personality, he takes the buckle. You know what I mean?
He loves the buckle.
He likes a little bit of punishment.
Yeah.
I think he could withstand it.
Now, do you like it when your girlfriend yells at you or gets mad at you?
No, not at all.
You like it when she takes control, though?
No.
Grabs you by your fucking hair?
Oh, no.
Well, that's what you're going to get with Vito.
Oh, well, this is going to be a whole new thing for me.
Let's call her and say.
She's at work right now.
What's her extension?
Don't even know.
Do people still have extensions?
People do, yeah.
I would never,
Chris has an extension.
I have an extension.
I would never call anybody's fucking office like that. Is that the thing that you give out?
No, my cell phone's is what I give
You
out.
don't answer your cell phone, dude.
Well, that's the only way to get in touch with me, because the extension...
There isn't a way to get in touch with you. Because you take... Well, yesterday, it took you how many hours to get back to me? 18?
That was a long time, yeah.
And he says his phone won't ring here. Mine does. What kind of phone you got?
I have a Samsung Galaxy S6.
That tells the whole story, doesn't it?
It's Sprint is the service. It's not the phone. Yeah. And if I'm sitting here in this position, no service. And if I'm sitting at my desk, I just get your voicemails sometimes. And it doesn't even ring.
Then why do you give it out to people you're trying to fucking book? They must think you're fucking ridiculous.
You're trying to take them to the book zone.
You never answer your phone, and then when you do, you're saying fucking farting. Mason in Canada.
Hey. I just wanted to say I think the friend zone thing you guys stepped in is a lot more nuanced and large. I think that you haven't even touched on a few of the things.
Okay, please do.
Well, I have a friend. He's a buddy. We call him Friend Zone. That's his nickname because every time he tries to...
That's a good nickname. I want to fucking hang out and bust that guy's balls with you.
But that's the thing is every time he tries to close with a girl, anytime he goes on a date, anything, he's a nice guy, so they always friend zone him, but he doesn't get past that point. And it's just because he doesn't know how to close and he doesn't know how to read these girls to know if there is a shot or if they do have an attraction. So he automatically just gets friend zoned because he does things for all these girls, right? He'll kind of go above and beyond for them.
Yeah, he seems like he's a good dude who likes to be in service. Instead, he's a stalker.
Yeah, he's not getting anything in return.
No, why should he? And any more than you don't fuck him either. You know what I mean? You've got to stand up and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm thinking. Vito, I know you wrote a big comedy news story today. What was it?
It was about Daniel Radcliffe and a Mr. Paul Dano in a commercial, a music video.
Great pitch, buddy. All right. I shiver sometimes when I hear how exciting something like that sounds. Look what it is. It's our old friend Janice from Chicago.
Hello, Bennington.
Hey.
I was just curious. Chris, did you quit smoking reefer and cigarettes?
No reefer, no cigarettes, Janice. It's been almost 5 weeks without cigarettes.
Holy smokes. It's amazing.
He's all white knuckling, too.
Awesome.
The cigarettes are really freaking me out.
Do you feel like you'll go back to drinking someday?
Yes.
Do you feel like you'll go back to cigarettes one day?
I don't want to go back to cigarettes really badly. I don't think I will. Since I'm able to do 5 weeks.
Will you go back to weed smoking?
Probably.
Okay. So you got one definite, you got one probably, and a hope not.
Those are my.
But that's
Those are
cool.
where
Do
I'm
you
at.
save the money from your cigarettes? That's awesome.
Yeah, you can buy weed. Oh, no. Well, you can buy drink.
No,
You can.
not yet.
Now, how do your new friends, do they like you as much when you're not drinking?
They're just finding it strange. I'm a strange guy when I'm not drinking.
Yeah, you are kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Both ways. You're creepy in a drunk way, and then you're creepy in a sober way. I was going to talk to your old friends about it, but they're done with you.
Can't get a hold of them.
Want to deal with my bullshit?
I'd love
It
to.
must be why he quit drinking. He did something so horrific.
We're going to
You
get to
can't
the bottom of
face.
this. But you're right. It probably is related to drinking because they like that kind of all was coming around the same time, right?
Does other Chris know your best friend?
Mm-mm.
Who looks and talks? He doesn't know that you're not friends with the old guys?
Oh, no, yeah.
He knows, right? Because he's
Does
one
he
of
know
them.
the reason?
He might. I haven't talked to him about it.
Why?
I would love to have those guys come in and do the show sometime, promote your podcast. His podcast team just stole the skanks away
I heard that, actually. I heard that.
from
Is it?
Compound Media.
That's true.
I know nothing about any sort of contract negotiations at all.
Lucia Gomez said that you said to him, being on Compound Media is like having a compound fracture.
Wow.
Gomez is saying these things?
You know, and
Yeah.
when you put it like that,
It made me want to jump. And then you said, come to our place, you'll have a gas. What
okay,
is your place
that's
called again?
great.
Gas Digital Networks.
Cool.
It's a gas.
Where'd that dude make his money from? Did he grow up rich?
Radio, I believe.
Come on. I work in radio. I never heard of him.
Investments, I believe, also. Not sure. Didn't look into it.
You're making shit up.
Radio investments?
His investments or his dad?
No idea. I don't discuss money.
Yeah. I heard that from your agent. You get nervous if somebody asks you a straight question, right? You'd rather get the beat down than someone actually try to talk to you.
Like the buckle, like I was saying.
They call me a buckle boy.
No, they don't.
Stephen Knight says this, friend zone implies you're owed something sexual for pretending to be a decent human. It's a gross mentality. I think we agree with that.
Thank you, Stephen Knight. That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Matt,
Yes.
what's up?
I was just going to talk about that alligator.
Go ahead and do it.
Well, the alligator looks to me like he's off that skin commercial.
Possible.
Looks like it's bullshit.
Yeah. I
And
kind
as far
of feel... It kind of feels... Yeah, go ahead.
As far as the friend zone goes,
Good.
you just need to change your game up.
Okay.
Change the game.
Yep.
Switch to some off-speed pitches.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Come out of the bullpen with an off-speed pitch. Well, do people still think of it as a game? The eternal dance between men and women? First she acts like she's leaving and drops her kerchief for me to pick up and chase her.
I think men still think it's a game.
You don't think women play games?
No, I think that they don't think of it that way. It doesn't mean that they don't do it. But I think that they think this is the way I am and this is just what I'm doing. I don't think that they perceive it. I don't think that because they don't do it at like sport, that they don't perceive it as a game. Women play games, of course. But I think they just think that's the way things are done. I wouldn't play games. Like if you said that to a woman, I
They
think
wouldn't
that
believe it, but they are playing a game.
I think that is very true.
Now let me just ask Vito. Vito, do women play games?
Women play a whole lot of games.
See?
That's all they do.
Yeah, sure.
That's all they do?
No, but they do a lot of other good things too. I think I'd say 90%.
Adorable response. And other good things, other good qualities.
90% games.
It's like when Trump said they let in rapists and killers, and I'm sure some, good people too. Like you start going, man, they can't all be.
Yeah.
Now, Chris, has your girlfriend ever played a game with you?
Not
Perhaps
last game.
keeping sex away from you for a little while until she got her way.
I can remember.
Because of the drinking?
Well, yeah, the drinking doesn't help anything.
Chris and I have been together for 7 wonderful blackout years.
Blurry years. But I couldn't imagine, how in the world today. I guess, is Tinder like a game? Do women play games on Tinder? I would guess so.
I mean, I think everything is, if you're going to put up a different kind of picture of yourself.
Sure.
This is funny. I said, even come up. So I'm walking down the hall today, and not the hall, the street, 6th Avenue. And a woman, I see her taking a picture of the fountain right next door, right?
Mm-hmm.
As I walk behind her, I see she's not taking a picture of her fountain. She's taking a selfie in front of the fountain, not of the fountain. And I found myself in the back of the picture, and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, I wonder how many stupid pictures I end up in Midtown.
Oh, I think
probably
about
a dozen a week.
Constantly in New York. And growing up in Florida, I went from a tourist place to another tourist destination. I'm all over people's family photos in the background.
There was a thing, it was on the internet years ago. So a woman, goes back and she's looking, and this isn't even like digital pictures. She's actually looking through pictures. So she's looking through, here we are at Disney World. And there's my sister and my mom and all that. And in the background, there's a little boy from a different part of the country that she ended up marrying.
Whoa.
Is that fucking nuts?
That's really, really weird.
And that kind of shit happens all the time. It's always really fun, too, if you think of, if you met a girl at a party but didn't say anything and she didn't say anything to you, and you're just standing, and then that's the girl that you eventually marry one day, but that first night you just had your backs to each other, you were ignoring it. That's always nuts to me.
Yeah, that's really, really strange. Or if you think about somebody visiting where you lived at that time period when you were a kid and you probably crossed paths, it's surreal. I mean, I had something similar happen, but it was with a horse once.
What?
Don't tell me.
No, this is going to sound really weird, but...
Is the video out?
No, that's not what I meant.
Oh, good.
When I was a kid, we were driving by a farm in rural Maryland, and there were horses that were down by the fence, and I hopped out of the car, and you took a photo of me, and in the background was a baby, a colt of a horse. And then years later, it ended up being a horse that someone we knew bought. And they recognized the horse as,
was in the background. You took an amazing story and replaced it with a kind of okay one. I mean, I know people who've tried to top stories, but to try to bottom a story.
Well, you heard in my voice that I said, well, it happened to me once, and then I went with a horse, and I realized this was not going to be as good.
This is a friend of mine got murdered. Yeah, I know. A friend of mine's got the flu and probably isn't coming into work tomorrow.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. So I bottomed you. Okay? Fuck you.
I did not want to top you.
Up on the iBank today are amazing pictures of Liza Traeger, and this is her neighborhood that she lives in. And there she is.
Oh, I love that photo.
Is it great?
She's the cutest. I adore Lisa so much.
Now this is, I think that's the restaurant or whatever that she goes to every day, or at least twice a day in her neighborhood.
It's like East Williamsburg, CeeLo Cafe.
Well, some people say she lives in East Williamsburg, and another friend scream at her, you don't, you live in Bushwick. So she doesn't really know what her neighborhood is.
It's an age-old fight.
Yeah, it is. So I'll keep going through some of these pics. There she is at home.
She looks very comfy.
And it's a great kind of house coat she's wearing. But then, stop it, Chris. You're driving me nuts.
Is she smoking some reefer?
Yeah, I think so, probably. But then look at her artwork. It looks like one woman is eating another woman's ass.
Yeah, that's happening.
Interesting.
There's some ass about to go down in that picture.
Now, by the way, she's very young, and her career is just popping.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She's so funny, and
you know how old she is? She's 14.
Bullshit.
God.
Yeah.
She's not even high school.
She's a baby.
You weren't in high school at 14? You must be half a moron. All right, keep going. Is that all of them? Oh, there she is. She just loves her neighborhood. Have you ever lived in a neighborhood you just love?
Yeah, I've fallen in love with many neighborhoods in the city that I've lived in.
Well, Chris, you love yours, right?
Love Astoria / Long
Do you
Island
love
City.
yours, Vito, or you wish you were out?
I love the Upper West Side.
Do you?
Yeah, it's like nice. It's like quiet, quaint. There's not too much noise.
Oh, yeah,
going
and
on.
that you and your wife are planning on starting a family. It's not something you would expect a 20-some-year-old guy to be talking about living in a quiet, quaint neighborhood.
You want to be down Ludlow Street?
No, I don't
fucking
want to
partying,
deal
man.
with people yelling outside of my apartment like other people have to deal with.
By the way, you see his age where he's still bragging about Ludlow Street.
What's wrong with Ludlow Street? Still popping off.
Yes, when Moby was there. It was fucking insane.
Love that neighborhood.
Anyway, this is great pictures and great little story. This is my favorite thing that I think that comes up on the iBank.
I know. I love going
that Phil
through
does.
little profiles on them.
And Phil Provencio.
Yes. I don't know who the next one is going to be. I think it's going to be tough to top this one.
This one's got
She
a lot
really
of
just opened her life to everyone.
She did. I feel like this is the most revealing.
I would never say what my daily restaurant was that I went to 2 times a day. It's great when you have a joint like that, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's the best. I have 2 in my neighborhood that are go-to spots that I probably go to like once or twice a week.
Dinerish?
No, there's a diner as well, but one is a French restaurant.
That's the one that I went to with
Yes.
you? I love that fucking place.
It's so good. And it's
But
my
Vita would hate it because it's very hipster.
yeah. Too many H-sters.
Too loud.
Not my scene.
You're seeing our old
Queen.
Italian people
Yeah.
that still fucking hang up their clothes in the alley.
They wear bowling shirts and play bocce.
Blue buddies. Can I tell you, you play bocce?
I've played a few times.
I'll fucking crush you, dude. I love that fucking game.
He's a good bocce player.
You know why? I have a decent sense of distance. I just feel like I know the distance. And I also am able to do this, I think, pretty well. Walk into the room and say how many people are there. When I'll say to people, oh, I went out to a club, it was packed. I always go, really? How many people? And they'll go, I don't know. I don't really know, like 20 or 2,000. I can't tell. That drives me nuts.
I know.
If I go into a club, I know how many fucking people are in a club.
Yeah. This comes up with us a lot when anytime I see a sporting event or a show or whatever, and you'll say like, about how many people are there. I'm like, 100, 200.
There's not going to be 100 people in the stadium.
100? So many hundreds.
Speaking of which, Saint from your youth is going to be doing an Italian. Oh, Gloria Estefan.
The Gloria Estefan.
Now, you think people are famous. Gloria Estefan in Miami, you don't know a human being that's that famous in New York.
They lose her for her?
They love her.
And if anything happens, she is called upon as if it was the Wizard of Oz. Like there's been something that's happened. Let's see what Gloria Estefan has to do.
Get Gloria. She'll know what to do.
Gloria!
But I feel like just before she did her town hall, I think she was in the bathroom, and I think her people were doing her hair because it just smelled so good, and it smelled like a whole can of hairspray in there. It really was like,
a great,
Gloria's been here.
Restaurant too down there.
Oh yeah,
I don't
that's
know whether
right.
She still has it, but it was down when we were there. There were some people writing to me about how much I love the Liz Traeger pictures. Troy. What's up, buddy?
How are you all this afternoon?
Hey, man.
When I was 15 years old, my first job was at a mall at a place called the Peanut Shack. They sell stuff by the pound, drinks. My wife at the time was 17. She worked at a jewelry store. As we now approach our 29th anniversary, we've been talking, and we've figured out that we must have seen each other dozens of times with no recognition of each other.
Didn't think like, oh, there's the girl I'm going to marry one day. Because people still believe that, you could see somebody and some kind of weird magic happens.
Yeah.
To me numerous times looking at pictures of me, I would have never dated you. She had no interest in what I looked like at 15.
That's fucking great. All right, thanks, Troy. Peace. Here's Dougie in Florida.
Hey, Bennington. Good afternoon.
Hey, man.
First, that the alligator is a real alligator, but the guy that's closer, he's videoing a smaller alligator that's superimposed larger into the other guy's video. And if you look at the
Let's
light,
stop it here so we can understand this. So it's basically what we said, trick photography.
yeah, it's a smaller alligator. Otherwise, that guy wouldn't be so, be like a hero walking that close to that dinosaur.
What?
Yeah.
So how does he superimpose it?
Well, the guy, he's filming a smaller alligator walking. What he films is put into the other guy's video and enlarged. If you look at the lighting, the sun's on the back of the guy's videoing it, but if you look under the alligator, there's a shadow, which would not be cast.
And that's exactly what Chris was bragging about.
Oh,
so,
bitch.
This is what we said, trick photography.
I hate that alligator.
No, hate yourself, Chris. The alligator has done nothing wrong. He's simply been a reptile walking slowly, ever so slowly through a golf course.
Chris is saying the alligator put him in the friend zone.
I got
It's not true,
fucking
Chris.
friend zoned by an alligator. It's not even fucking human.
First of all, she's teasing you and then you're running with it. You have got to swallow your own gullibility, my friend. You must feel like a piece of garbage from Garbage Town.
I might as well just move into a fucking garbage truck.
Why?
And call it my own food truck because
No.
I'm serving garbage out here.
They'll get rid of you if you do that. You must hide from a garbage truck. Dan in Virginia.
Hey, guys.
Yeah.
I met my wife in kindergarten, of all places, and I had the biggest crush on her. She never knew who I was. I played basketball a block from her house, and then we met back up after we graduated high school, and we've been married 18 years.
Wow. So that whole time that you were young, she did not know that you even liked her?
No, not a clue.
Yeah. Was it driving you crazy when she was dating other boys?
A little bit, but let her get all the bad experiences out of her system so she can appreciate me.
Now, why did they call her finger cuffs? What was the... You can't get mad at that. Dan, I'm going to send you into the pretty good prize closet. I love your story. Now, I had a little girlfriend in first grade that I think I probably loved as much as I've ever loved anybody in my life. I was crazy about her, and we were no longer together. Crushing.
Yeah. I think like your crushes are just as big, and then your heartbreak is worse.
I think my heartbreak from that was worse than my divorce. I would honestly say the divorce was not so difficult. Here's Alex in California. Hey, Alex.
Tony, if that alligator is too tall, it has the gait of an iguana or a Gila monster that could be superimposed on top of an alligator.
No.
You know what?
So it has the gait. The gait is not low. The profile's too high. There's too much space between the belly and the ground.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
There's way too much.
You are correct that they normally are very tight to the ground. You never see an alligator. You never could roll a ball under an alligator. It just doesn't happen. I don't even think that you could play air hockey and get the puck under an alligator.
Damn.
Because I've tried. I put one on a air hockey table, and I'm just like, fuck. It's not going to fucking work.
You can't win this game.
Yeah. Couldn't do it. Not gonna do it.
That's such a good impression.
Yeah, thanks. That's my impression of the third Bush, the one that's still young and is trying to find out how he fits in. Boy, Donald Trump has been taking fucking shit for a couple days. He's just getting pounded on TV around the clock. At fucking Trump University. And then Mark Cuban goes, dude, this guy's got no fucking money. He goes, he's barely liquid. He goes, I got way more money than him. And they're like, what? Are you kidding? He goes, why do you think he runs around putting his names on cheap steaks and water? And he goes, what does he make off that? $2-3 million? $5? He goes, no billionaire would go and do that. And I'm like, that does make sense, because why would he? You know, the Rockefellers just wouldn't come out with like Rockefeller Jello. You know what I mean?
They'd have like one product.
They wouldn't have any products.
They wouldn't
just
need it.
already had their fucking money and their base down. And that's it. But you never go around endorsing things like you're a fucking basketball player.
Yeah, it's very strange. Good point, Mark Cuban, along with all those other points you make.
Here's the weird thing about Mark Cuban, though. He ain't Cuban. I just feel like it's a wasted name.
Yeah.
Bruce.
I'd call him Mark the Cuban. Here comes Mark the Cuban.
Hey,
Does that
watch
bother
it.
you? Vito, you made any white friends yet, or you still?
No, I'm still only hanging out with mostly black people and some Asians.
You couldn't find pretty good price?
I could now. To locate it.
All right, I'll try to find another winner real fast.
Got it.
Because I'm pushing it. I know one thing. He's a lot better than Joe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a hell of a lot
Did I
better.
lose my shades? I don't know what. I mean, Chris always tries to steal shit from me, but during the show?
I'm no thief, Ron, to you.
I don't see them.
That's our Chris.
Chris, why'd you take them?
It's our fucking Chris
I'm not
Stanley.
taking
Why'd you
shit.
take the shades,
I'm not
Chris?
taking shit.
Why'd you take the shades?
Not a thief.
Why'd you kill the puppies?
That's what I was doing.
Paul, California.
Hey, Bennington.
Hey, man.
Hey, when I graduated college, I saw a girl across the party at graduation, and she about a week later came into my work. And so I helped to get her a job there and friend-zoned her because I was dating somebody else, and now we've been married or together for about 19 years. So she was in the friend zone on the other way.
You friend-zoned her.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was dating somebody else and not really interested in her at the time.
Because you bullpenned her, really, more than friends.
Yeah.
Her. You know what? Pretty good price.
It's the pretty good price. It's the pretty good price, Fred's Closet. We have pretty good prizes. It's the pretty good price.
Paul.
It's the pretty good price, Fred's
Guess
Closet.
what you won, man? Doug Stanhope's new book.
Oh, shit.
Signed.
Oh.
Digging Up Mother.
That's great.
Stay on the line. We're going to get your info, dude.
I like the way he talks to
I
them.
know. It's very confident.
cool.
I love that book, by the way. Here's what I was just thinking. Since we never know who's going to be on that board, each of you should cut your own version of that song. And
That's
you only
perfect.
go to it when you're there. Joe, you're losing everything. Hey, time for us to break. We'll be back with Duncan Trussell, his podcast, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, available on iTunes at DuncanTrussell.com's Twitter's at Duncan Trussell for the first responders. We'll be right back. Bennington.
Bennington is back, and we have Duncan Trussell in studio with us. Duncan's podcast, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, is available on iTunes and at DuncanTrussell.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Duncan Trussell.
That's it. One of the most unique stand-ups working today. And just to show you, what gig are you doing tonight? Where are you?
Okay, well, we're doing I'm interviewing some Buddhists tonight. I'm interviewing a Buddhist called Lama Suryadas and another Buddhist, Chris Grosso. They're both spiritual teachers, really cool guys. Really fascinating people. So I'm at ABC. I'm at the Deepak Chopra Theater.
Wow.
So interviewing these guys.
Have you met Deepak before?
I never have, no.
He's done the show a couple of times. He used to have a show here. And he's really a fascinating guy. But then when he was in with me, I was talking to him about his alcoholism after it was over and it was done. He goes, no one ever asked me about me. It's always about what I could do for them. It's the first time he said that anyone said, hey, you were pretty fucked up when you were younger, too.
Wow.
No one ever thinks of him that way, like just young Deepak being off the rails.
But you saw him years before that, too. Like, didn't you see him speak a couple times?
When a friend of mine had AIDS, we went to see him because we were on this weird thing of, what could you do? This was probably early 90s. So that sets you off on whatever you think can go along with Western medicine, you know?
Right.
But I don't know that many comics that have ever worked from a spiritual point of view the way you do.
Yeah, well, it's an evolving thing. It didn't start off where that was what I was talking about a lot. It just sort of shifted into that over time, And I think the word spiritual and the word comedian are both really difficult words, and that these days it can mean anything at all.
Right.
And I hate getting caught up in them, because then I start thinking, I better act like a comedian. And that means over this tour that I just did, somewhere in the process of doing show after show after show, my whole act just sort of shifted, and I really began talking about the stuff I talk about on the podcast and focusing on that.
Yeah.
And it worked. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because I think the danger is, if you're going to be a comedian talking about spiritual stuff, you can become didactic and boring and just the worst of worsts, which is a terror for me. I never want to be like that. But there's so much in spirituality that isn't, I think, what people think it is. There's so much in it that's really like not tame. Mm-hmm. Do you ever read C.S. Lewis?
Yeah.
And, the Chronicles of Narnia,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and Aslan as a Jesus metaphor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so there's this amazing thing, and I can't remember, I think it's the last of the Chronicles of Narnia. There's an amazing thing where someone's describing Aslan, and he says, he is not a tame lion. This is a ferocious thing. And I think that spirituality is not a tame thing at all, but it's one of the most psychedelic things that I've ever encountered, really.
Well, the thing is, when we think of spiritual, we're thinking of someone, priest, minister, guru, rabbi who has the answers. But the real fun is in the questions. The real fun is when you sit around with your friends, you have a bunch of questions, and you leave just kind of blown away by questions.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, maybe specifically because of Christianity, you put the Messiah or the centerpiece as not complex, just all good and nothing. But if you think of the beginning of religions, where gods and goddesses, they had flaws and they were terrible sometimes. And it was a kind of more interesting idea, because I think there was this idea of that life was this way, and that God was not always fair, or, that you weren't going to always get the easy answer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's it. I think another aspect of the spiritual community, of sitting around talking with your friends, when people do that, they don't realize that that's a practice, that when you find yourself in a great, deep conversation about your place in the universe with your friends, you are engaging in one of the most ancient forms of spiritual practice that there is. And really, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it is the thing. This is why in Christianity, they say the church, the community, is the body of Christ. And when if you're a Christian, or if you've heard anything about Christianity, then you don't pay attention to phrases like that, because you've heard it so many times. But that is one of the most psychedelic concepts, which is that this group of people all over the planet is actually the flesh of a God made up of a myriad of different people practicing in different ways. So it's this superorganism called Christianity, or called Buddhism. They say the same thing in Buddhism as well, that the community is the Buddha. So when you're around a group of people talking about whatever it is, then really, if you really want to trip out, imagine that you're actually in the presence of an extra dimensional consciousness that sometimes takes the form of groups of people trying to unravel the mystery of what it is to be a entity trapped in time. And that's a blast. It's just a fun thing to do.
Well, we've all been in that group consciousness too. Like if you're in a concert, you're not talking to each other, yet everybody's having this experience. And sometimes the experience is unbelievable. Sometimes it's dull, and then sometimes it's dull, hits this high level. You're like, where the fuck am I? And then you come down again, and you're like, something happened, didn't it? Didn't something kind of happen there? And everyone kind of agrees, but there's kind of no words for it,
Well, I've got a word for it.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the word comes from someone who has a bit of a controversial past. I just heard about this. We don't have to talk about it, though. But it's the guy Hakeem Bey. And the word he gives for it is a temporary autonomous zone. So the idea is that, like, we exist obviously in a society where everybody's playing the game of being whatever the society is that you're in. So we play the game of being an American. If you're in New York, you play the game of living in New York and abiding by the sort of ebb and flow of the crowds as they move through the streets. And there's a real specific rhythm there. So this is a kind of temporal bubble that's emerged, filled with people who are abiding by the specific set of rules and ideas about what life is. So a temporary autonomous zone is a bubble that appears within another bubble. So inside of these massive games people are playing called countries or cities or whatever, these brand new bubbles will temporarily pop up because they can't sustain themselves, where a whole new set of rules comes into place. And this is where you get what's happening at Burning Man, or what maybe at a EDM festival or whatever, where suddenly you're like, this is not the same dimension that I came in from another dimension and I'm in a brand new place. And the feeling for me is usually one of airiness. It's a sense of lightness, a feeling of something is expanded into the crowd. And it's really magical. And you can't predict when it's going to happen. Like you said, there's no way to, and you know, when you've done a show and that spirit comes into the room, you're like, oh yeah, that was a good show. I felt it there. It was there. But you really can't control it. It just seems to pop in when it feels like.
I've been to parties like that. Like I go, how do you throw another party? That was as great. You know, you look around, people are just like dancing on tables and you look around and people, and you're like, this is so amazing. And then the next party is dull as shit.
That's right.
People are tense. You never know.
Do you think that it's easier the younger you are to tap into that thing, or do you think that it's something that actually comes with age, that you suddenly, that awareness when you're experiencing something like that?
You know, I don't know.
That's a weird scene too, Ben, because I think it happens both ways, but somewhat. Like, I think you go looking for it once you're an adult.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, you ever like see a kid's party and they just decide it's time to party? You know, like if you're like, hey, and none of them know about alcohol or weed or anything. Yeah. And they just decide it's party nut time. We're going to go crazy.
Yeah. Like, cause I feel like it's more accessible to you when the younger you are, but I don't think you reflect on it the way you do when you experience it with age.
Yeah, it's got to be the present moment, right? I mean, that's what a kid's doing, is the present moment. When you're a kid, you have very little. Generally, you're not really prognosticating what's going to happen. Maybe you're worried about what dinner's going to be, or depending on what family you're from. But it's the present moment. I mean, the present moment's the Garden of Eden. The present moment is the Grail or the City of Gold or whatever. It's like the great secret thing that's with you all the time. But when you're an adult, there's so much that goes into existing, which involves some future or thinking about the past, that you're never really quite here. And so when you start getting into this place, then it really is, I mean, for lack of a better word, it is something of a party. It is a pretty incredible, beautiful thing that we happen to have accidentally or intentionally, I'm not sure, popped into here. Like, it's just in any given moment.
Yeah. It's
amazing. And I think when people do drugs, they think that they're doing drugs because of the feeling the drugs are giving them. But I've noticed that it seems like whenever I'm doing psychedelics, what is really getting me high is that they're forcing me into the present moment. Yeah. And you really don't need a psychedelic to experience the present moment, but it will show it to you so you know what to look for when you're not tripping.
But, you know, even a vacation is the same way. Like a vacation, you're forced into this, hey, look, I'm here, blah, blah, blah. Isn't this great? We have a couple moments. There's no reason that you have to travel to even do that. And yet we do it all the time.
That's right, man. That's right, yeah.
We pay big money just to get away and feel in that moment.
And you get there. Yeah. This just happened to me. I go to these meditation retreats twice a year, and it's mindfulness that they teach. And so after this meditation retreat, I'm feeling very peaceful. And we go to this beautiful resort in Maui, and I'm hanging out by the pool. And suddenly I realize I'm crazy. There's no way I can enjoy this. I could feel the momentum of my entire life. And it's not like that momentum just stops when you go on vacation. Your mind is still perturbed just because you're slurping back Mai Tais and there's a nice pool and the ocean is there. Your mind is still completely scattered. And so this very expensive endeavor that a vacation is, more than often just illuminates how scattered your mind is and how you really can't relax.
And then you have tons of pressure on you
to enjoy.
You're like, I've spent all this money, I've traveled all this way, and I just need to relax. I'm so relaxed right now. I just can't even believe it.
And you're faking it. You're pretending to be relaxed when you're freaking out. And that's really the kind of the horror of living a life where you're always in the future, because whenever you do get to those moments where there's the potential to enjoy it, vacation, sex, good food, whatever it is, you're always freaked out. You're never quite there.
I had this experience when I was in the Sistine Chapel, and I was like, okay, this is that moment, and here I am, and I was like, I want to feel this, and I was younger, so I wanted to feel it so deeply, and I was like, there was all this pressure to feel emotional, and it wasn't until, by the way, you have no idea how much time to spend in there, because you're like, you don't really know. You're like, all right, now I've looked at every part of the Sistine Chapel, and now what do I do? But it was right as I was about to leave that I got really emotional, because I was like, I don't know if I'll ever come back here, or when I return here, will I be 60 years old? And so then I started to be like, as I was like leaving that, I was like, oh, you're like leaving this chunk of yourself here. It was a very surreal experience, but I just remember thinking like, just feel this and take this all in. And I was just so overwhelmed that I didn't know how to do it.
That's cool. Well, that's why they call it a practice. That's the term practice is you're sort of practicing so that in those moments you can at least get closer to that place. But there's no rush. Just that thing that happened that's incredibly beautiful. Like, that is it. As far as I'm concerned, if that's not a mystical experience, I don't know what is. That's incredibly beautiful and poignant, But yeah, that's a funny thing where people think they need to go to a holy place or a sacred space to feel whatever you want to call it, to feel the light or whatever, and then it'll sneak up on you when you least expect it. Like for me, I'll be walking the dog and then look at a flower, and it's the most incredible thing you've ever seen. Flowers are incredible. Like when you look at bees and flowers, not that the Sistine Chapel isn't great, but when you look at a flower, this is a Sistine Chapel for bees. And when you look at the bees going into the flower, I just read that the flower is sending out electrical impulses, or the bees are sending out electrical impulses so that they understand which flowers to go to. And you realize that these are two different species having this incredible conversation. And then you realize flowers are genitals, like these are, whenever you're looking at a flower, am I allowed to curse on this show? Yeah. You're looking at the pussy of nature. It's the flower is this, that's what it is, man. It's a pussy, and bees are flying into it, rolling around inside of it, and then pollinating everything else. And when you realize this incredibly erotic, beautiful thing is just exploding out of the earth at every moment, then it makes the Sistine Chapel, and I'm not trying to one-up you, because the Sistine Chapel's incredible, but it makes the Sistine Chapel seem like one tiny little piece of this beautiful tapestry that we're living in.
And it also answers the reason why I've been jerking off on flowers for so many years. Everybody is saying, why are you doing it? I didn't know.
Wow,
I just went with it.
You cracked the code.
Ron, I would fuck a flower. If it was possible, like if that was a thing you could do, and I would definitely do that. I would definitely roll around in a flower. if there was a giant flower that I could have some time alone in, I would jerk off in the flower. They're just so beautiful, and but then I guess I'd jerk off on anything. It doesn't have to be a flower.
It doesn't have to be a flower at all. Yeah.
The Duncan Trussell Family Hour is available on iTunes and at DuncanTrussell.com, and follow him on Twitter at Duncan Trussell.
Now, we were talking about holy places when you brought up, like, you don't have to go to a holy place. And yet, even if you take the religion out of it, we know that there are like studios that the greatest music has been done in. We know that there are comedy clubs that people will go in and have a better set than they've ever. How do things like that, you think, take place, man?
This is, I'm going to mess it up, but there's a fellow called Rupert Sheldrake. You ever heard of this guy?
I don't think so.
So I'll mess it up because I barely understand it. So anyone out there is familiar with Sheldrake, forgive me for ruining what his theories. But basically the idea is that, okay, so imagine time as an object, right? And repetitive activity sort of creates what's called a runnel, what he calls a runnel. It creates this track in the time-space continuum. So a place where an activity has been done over and over and over and over and over and over again gradually kind of creates a specific a specific pattern inside of time. So like a great comedy club, why is it great? Did it start off great? The Comedy Store, the original room. When someone was on stage in the original room for the very first time, were they thinking, this is the best club in the country? I don't know. I doubt it, though. I think that over time, or Sheldrake might say over time, all that energy has actually created this kind of invisible shape inside of time so that there's more of a tendency for the thing we call a great comedy show to happen there. And it kind of explains haunted places or places where like awful things keep happening over and over again. If just enough awful things happen, according to this weird theory, then there will be the increased tendency of that awful thing to happen there again and again and again and again, or great things. So maybe that's what a holy place is. Or maybe it's just subjective. It's a great experiment you could do, which is take a group of people who are unaware if one place were holy or if another, and then tell them the place that wasn't holy was, and see if they have some mystical experience there just based on their own belief that it was holy.
It is really weird that way, because remember when we went to Sun Records when you were a kid and we didn't expect it, and we walk into this little room that is about the size of this room that we're in now. And we just go, whoa, and we're just thinking and listening to all the great songs that were recorded there, and you're just like, fuck, I kind of feel it, and I felt like I felt the river, I felt like being close to that water had something to do with it as well. It's always, the Mississippi for me, no matter where you are on the Mississippi, has a different vibe, but you can feel it in New Orleans and you feel it in Memphis, but it feels different there and all the way up.
When I was in college, some friends of mine and I, we went to India to this place called Varanasi, which it sits on the Ganges River, and we didn't know too much about, a little, the Ganges River is considered a very sacred river or whatever, but we went to Varanasi because we'd been in northern India and some Australians were like, weed's legal in Varanasi. So go to Varanasi and get a bong lassi. Just ask for a bong lassi. It's a weed drink. You'll love it. So we go to Varanasi and we order this bong lassi and we drink it. And at that time, we weren't familiar with the differences in eating weed and smoking weed, so we had no idea what we had ingested, how much we'd ingested. The guys who served it to us had this weird look on their face, like they were getting off on fucking up Western kids who had no idea what they were doing. So we drink this bong lassi, and we decide we'll take a boat out on the Ganges River. And we hadn't even started getting high. And then we get in this boat, and then it kicks in, and then it dawns on me that I have made the decision to get incredibly high and float out on this river that a large population of the planet, a large part of the human population thinks is the most sacred river on the earth. And so suddenly I'm floating there, and you look at Varanasi from the river, and there's smoke rising up from the cremated bodies are just constantly being cremated there. The place smells like yesterday I walked by a burger place and smelled, and it's like, oh, it smells like Varanasi. Because Varanasi smells like burning bodies all the time. And monkeys are running on the roof, and people are like in the river, like, Shivites with candles and bells. And yeah, man, this was a holy place, and it wasn't a subjective placebo effect. It was partially the weed, but more than that, this is a place where human bodies have been being incinerated for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and you could just feel it. You could feel that whatever you think is going on this planet is not what's going on. There's something much, much, much bigger than we really understand.
And ancient people kind of knew that, right? Ancient people felt that way, like, all the time. Like, they knew that there was something going on. They would try to dance or sacrifice something, whatever, because they kind of felt out of control. But maybe since technology, we feel like we're in control all the time.
There's a theory that I've heard about that, which is that the human brain so our neocortex, they call it the neocortex, because I guess it's the newest addition to the human brain or something. And it's been, so it's, our brain is still developing and humans continue to evolve. So there's a very cool theory that the space between waking and dreaming that we have now, it used to not be so distinct. So you were kind of dreaming all day long because the brain hadn't developed that much. And so, gradually so like now we have a voice in our head, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll think about doing something stupid and there'll be a part of you that says, you really shouldn't do that. And we know, that's just like my instinct, intuition, whatever you want to call it. But possibly before our brains developed, that was the voice of God. People were always hearing the voice of God in this thing that we consider our intuition. So that's a kind of, I guess, a neurological explanation for why ancient people seem to have more of a connection to gods or whatever. It's just because they were dreaming all the time. Another reason may be because people sacramentally were taking psychedelics all the time. Like now we don't do it because we exist in a society where psychedelics have been criminalized, which is one of the most insane, horrible things that maybe is happened to us historically in recorded history, but back then it wasn't considered something evil or that druggies do. It was something that you did as a form of spiritual practice or connection to your tribe or friends. So maybe that's part of it too. Sometimes when you see people engaging in religion minus the psychedelic, not that you need psychedelics to engage in religion, but it sure helps. And for those of you who aren't sober, eat some marijuana and go to a Catholic mass, even if you're not Christian. Get very high and go to a sacred space where a ritual is happening, and you can really feel it then. And sometimes it almost feels as though people, when they say they're practicing religion, when the psychedelics aren't involved, it's like people sitting around a campfire they haven't lit yet, pretending that they're warming their hands on the thing. Sometimes now it doesn't have to be psychedelics, by the way. This is only one way to ignite whatever the specific philosophy is that you're interested in, but it definitely helps. So who knows? Maybe that's part of it too. Maybe they were all tripping.
I was thinking too, when I was like a little kid, my mom would still go to Latin masses and take us to Latin masses, so I wouldn't know anything. Plus, she wouldn't let us eat. We couldn't eat till after. I was tired from getting up. And those things were pretty trippy. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you just had to go with it. But if any of my friends went in there, they would be petrified of what this mass looked like. It was scary if you weren't accepting.
And the mass is wild because when you consider, okay, what is the mass, right? How did when people came up with this idea of the mass, what's it based on? Because when you read the Gospels, there is the Last Supper and Jesus says, this is my blood, drink this in remembrance of me. This is my body, this is my blood. But there was no outfits, right? Nobody's wearing robes. Nobody's wearing weird hats. There are no scepters. There's no incense urns. There's no altar. There's none of this. And nowhere in the Bible does it say, here's how you celebrate the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. Wear robes, build a chapel with stained glass windows, and go through this very formal ritual. So where did it come from, right? Where did it come from? Where did the Mass come from? And really what you're looking at there is an occult ritual. The Mass is an occult ritual that's older than Christianity, which is the transubstantiation of some matter into the flesh of God, which the human ingests. This is a very old thing. It wasn't just Christianity that came up with the idea that if we eat the dead God, we'll gain the God's power. It's really, really old. And so some people say that the Mass dates back to Egypt, that you're looking at some kind of Egyptian magical ritual that's been revised with the symbols of Christianity. So that is, when you go to a mass, what you're really seeing is a hardcore occult ritual that is calling itself Christianity.
But you don't think that Christ was doing it. You just think that they picked up and they said, oh, yeah, Christ also did
Christ
this
was not doing.
Yeah.
There was Christ, as far as I'm aware, never did a mass.
Right. Of any kind.
Of any kind. Christ had the Last Supper. Is really one of the sweetest things ever, which is a guy who knows he's about to die, is hanging out with his friends, and he says to them, when you eat bread and when you drink wine, just remember me in that. If you think about that, it'll make you cry immediately. It's the sweetest damn thing you could say to your friends. It's just like, when you guys are having fun and connected, think about me, because I'm about to die. That's really beautiful, man. He did not say, wear pyramid-shaped hats.
Yeah.
And
be on stage.
Yeah, he didn't say that. So where does it come from? It's what is that? And it is magic. I mean, when you look at any form of Christianity it's magic. When you say a prayer, you are casting a spell.
It is.
Yeah. And there's really no difference. It's just Christianity is a form of magic that a lot of people practice, so it doesn't seem weird anymore.
Well, even when you start to pay attention to science, and, you're saying you're going to Deepak's thing, but he talks about this sometimes, that when you're breathing in, there's atoms that have been breathed in, So when you really are biting into something, there's probably is human, that those molecules were used for humans, probably Christ, because there's billions and trillions all over the place. So they're always saying that whenever you breathe in, you take a deep breath, you're breathing in Hitler, you're breathing in Mao Zedong, you're breathing in Tiny Tim. It's fucking as weird as any religion at all. The second you start to pay attention to science, you're like, well, this is some fucking wild shit.
That's right. And the second you start paying attention to anything, it's you think this is some wild shit, because it is. And a lot of, I think, what people do, and naturally, you can blame them, to evade the predicament that every single human being happens to have gotten into, which is that we're all being aerosolized by time. We exist in a universe where we're certain to die. Everyone we know is going to die. Anything that we're walking on is basically a pile of death. Time itself is like it's a moat. And to cross it, we walk on a bridge of death, because everything had to die for us to live. That's just reality. Like, the whole evolutionary process is dependent on death. Death fuels the whole thing. So this is a incredibly psychedelic situation to get into. And I think people, they focus on the news, they focus on their favorite shows, and they focus on, everyone's caught up over Trump and Hillary and Bernie right now, because it gives a false sense of safety in the maelstrom that we're existing in right now. And so whenever you're focusing on that stuff, it's like, okay, I'm fine. But this is a fantasy. You're creating a fantasy. And do you know who Chogyam Trungpa is?
No.
He's amazing. There's a great documentary on him on Netflix called Crazy Wisdom. And he says that human beings construct whatever your sense of self is, the things you like, the things you distract yourself from, the reality of your situation with, the sum total of all that. We create that. He compares it to someone who's walking on a floor of razor blades. And so we create this sense of identity and self, and we focus on it because it gives us an imaginary escape from the fundamental suffering that comes from being a human being, which is, in Buddhism, it's called fundamental dissatisfaction, which is that just being a human being is generally uncomfortable and terrifying at first. And so we escape into all this stuff that we call our lives because we can't deal with the fact that what we really are is the exhalation and inhalation of the universe. That's just too much. How am I going to walk around all day long knowing that eventually I'm going to just be somebody's exhalation, or inhalation? That's, and that I'm evaporating. I'm melting like some meaty snowman in time.
Yeah, it is kind of heavy. That's a lot for you to deal with. With people, how are you today? Well, I'm melting, literally melting.
And it's one of the most uncomfortable conversations with people. It's like people are very uncomfortable to discuss death, despite the fact that since you were very small, you knew that it was a sure thing. You knew that it was something. And I think in our culture, part of the way we treat the elderly, the way we try to hide them away or they mock them and push them to the side. It's this idea of like, I'm never going to be that guy. Right. I'm never going to be her. So I don't have to be afraid of this.
That's right.
But it's really, I mean, it's actually very uncomfortable when you're young, when you hear an elderly person who speaks about their death like it's like some summer vacation
crazy,
that they're
right?
going to take. And, you know, you have to hear your grandfather just be like, well, I don't even know if I'll make it then, but we'll see. And you're like, why would you say something so disturbing? Right. You're like, this person's sick that they're able to access that.
Well, and what's even weirder for me, because your grandfather is my father, so to hear your dad, who was the strongest person, go, maybe I'll get an extra year or two out of this. I don't know. I'm not going to, worry about it. I'm like, that's unbelievable that that my life has traveled that spot. But, one of my earliest memories, and I know it had to be like under 3 because of the house we lived in, that my grandmother, I was sitting on her lap and she was singing to me. And I remember thinking, she's so old, and listen to how weak her singing voice is, and look at her old hands, and I'm just going to hang out and get these cheese puffs that she has, I don't know how I could have even thought of that at that age. I don't know how I understood that.
Yeah. I remember when the first time you realize your folks are going to die, it's a pretty intense thing. Only because there does seem to, talk about conspiracies, there does seem to be a unintentional conspiracy to hide the fact of death away from people in Western society. In India, this is not as hidden. Like when you see dead bodies all the time, they're everywhere. The people are dying and living in front of each other. And so it just seems more normal. But here it's like, oh God, it's literally the worst thing that can happen to you.
We've taken those two pillars, the birth and death, kind of institutionalized, hospitalized, or like that's something that happens in a clean white room somewhere away from my house and has nothing to do with my day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's not the truth in other cultures, and certainly not in other times.
That's what I love about Stanhope's book, is that the way he's talking about it, they didn't die that differently than the way they lived together. You know what I mean? So when he's with his mom, it wasn't even this bigger than life thing that they went through. They treated it so like they did the other days of their lives. And I was reading, I was like, fuck.
There's something they say in hospice, which is that you die as you lived. So all the patterns that make up your life, they all happen in the death process too. The exact same thing repeats, of course, as you die, just in a more honest way. You get very honest when you're dying. People who are dying, they don't have a lot of reason to bullshit, so they get very, very honest, and it's a really beautiful thing to see. But yeah, you do the way someone lives will predict what they're going to be like on their deathbed. If someone's angry, they're probably going to be angry as they die. If somebody is likes to organize. Like when my mom was dying, she loved to organize. That was something she did. And so as she was dying, she spent the last few days of her life in a very, she had my brother bringing out boxes of files and organizing and alphabetizing, because that's how she lived. And it was smart. It was good that she did that too. But yeah, it's a really beautiful thing that happens when people die. And this is something that you won't understand until you've been around a dying person.
Yes.
And Ram Dass says, dying is safe. Dying is the safest thing that can happen to you. It's so safe because of all the things, the shared experiences that humans will have, it's birth and death. This is a thing that the universe has gone through we don't even know. I don't know how many people have died or how many people have lived, but that number of people, everyone, actually, I had this weird dream. I hope I'm not going on too long.
No.
Cause you have your mom's phone number memorized even after they die. Is your mom still around?
Yeah, my parents are still around, but I remember our first phone number from our house.
So you remember that. So, my mom's number, I won't say the whole thing, 828-891, last 4 digits. I'm afraid to call it. I don't want to hear someone else answer the damn phone. But in this dream, I was thinking more mothers have died than 828,891, however many. More mothers have died than the digits in my mom's phone number. Wow. And that's a really intense thing when you realize that this is the world, this is what we're in. And to be afraid of something like that is it really is a sad waste of energy. Because many people say, another thing Ram Dass says, which I really like, and how he knows this, who knows, but he's pretty incredible. He says, dying is like taking off a shoe that's too tight. It's in India, when someone dies, they don't say they died, they say they dropped their body, which is a really cool way of putting it.
Well, it was the same friend I talked about. I sat with her and her family when she died, when we were looking for it. And the second, right after, it was a very moving thing. We were all together. But right after her body, I immediately thought, looks like a jacket that she left behind. I did not feel that was her, the person that I know.
That's right.
And it was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
To go through the feeling leading up to that, and then the feeling of whatever we shared is gone.
Changed.
At this moment. Yeah.
And changed.
Yeah.
And because gone, there's skeptics, and I get it, but man, it just really just changed. That energy just changes. And, God, did you hear what the big article that's popping up now, how Elon Musk says he thinks we're all in a simulator?
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible, man, because he's not this isn't a...
No, there's a lot of guys that are saying that that this whole thing is coming from the other side. And these are these scientists that are saying this.
That's right.
It's not spiritual people. Oh, yeah, we're kind of holograms. This thing is happening, or maybe happened a long time ago. And you're just like,
yeah,
is this what it feels like to be a TV character? And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That could be in reruns one day.
That's right. Well, this is a rerun. And that's what, at least what some of the people are saying. This is the idea is, because we already have simulators now that are simulating reality in a incredibly precise way, and based on Moore's law, that precision is only going to grow, and it's growing at an exponential rate, which means that in some certain amount of time we could theoretically perfectly simulate reality. And so if that's something that already our species is able to do, or is about to be able to do, then if we exist in an infinite universe, there is the odds that we're the first species, the first organism to simulate reality perfectly is less than the odds that some other civilization simulated reality perfectly, meaning that it's more likely that we are existing in a simulation than that we would be the first to create a simulation. And what's fascinating about that is it really is what in Hinduism they call this reality we're in, Maya, and they say this reality is like the reflection of a forest on a lake. It's just it's a reflection. This isn't the real thing, which gets into the whole holographic universe theory. But if that's the case, that we're in a simulation, then the implication is that this thing that we're living in right now, like you're saying, it's some kind of program that's repeating, that we're just genetic bits of code that are repeating. And this is where you get into the trippy idea that we don't reincarnate, but we live our lives over and over and over and over again. This is what Nietzsche says.
Nietzsche did. Yeah, that was a Nietzsche theory.
Which is that if there's more suffering in your life than joy, then you're in hell. And that's just where you're at. If you have a life of suffering and you haven't broken out of whatever the confines are that you've created to make yourself, a miserable person accidentally. And if this universe is a repeating thing on some distant alien possibly dead civilization, maybe underground in some dead planet, just a server running on nuclear energy, repeating the exact same simulation over and over and over again. That means that if you haven't figured out a way to get happy, then you're going to be in hell for infinity because you're just a loop. And that's what a deja vu is.
Yeah.
A deja vu is maybe when a meteor slams into that dead planet and causes an earthquake that shakes whatever futuristic server room our lives happen to be running inside of.
That's amazing. By the way, you can hear Duncan do this all the time if you haven't before. It's always interesting.
The Duncan Trussell Family Hour, the podcast, it's available on iTunes and at duncantrussell.com.
Now, here's one of the things that ever even got me into thinking about this. I do stuff with a lot of songwriters, and I don't know anything about songwriting, but I've never met a songwriter, and I met the greatest of all time, who's ever taken credit for writing a song. They all have different metaphors for what it's like, you know, the wave coming in, you know, having an antenna and the song comes in, but all of them act like they just happened to be there when the song came through. Yeah. And it's mind-blowing once you start to put all these people together who generally don't talk about this with each other.
Wow. Yeah, that is well, that's a fun thing to think about. Any thought that you have, whatever the thought is, especially like whatever the most recent good idea that you had.
Yeah.
Just you didn't squeeze it out. Like there's no way to squeeze good ideas out of your brain. They just pop into your head. And where do they come from? You know, it's just no way to identify that. And there's a lot of, I've heard so many cool ideas. Like one idea is there's a kind of like, some people believe there's like a field of data that, okay, so like, people will sometimes you've never met invent the same thing right around the same time.
Yes.
And so, why? What is that? So the idea is like, well, maybe there's this like, whenever you get a great idea, an inspirational idea, hundreds of other people are tuning into that idea on some kind of frequency where that idea, for whatever reason, is ready to get birthed into the universe through the human conscious, through thought. And so the difference between you and the person who brings the idea into being is that you're like, I'm not going to write that down. I just want to go to bed. And then some people have the idea and they're like, shit, I think this is the alternating current engine. I'm going to write this down, and that transforms society. So in Star Trek, there's the idea that they can't interact with, there's a rule, like we're not going to interact with other civilizations.
Right, because
if they see our technology, we can create some drastic transformation. But if the idea is like these songwriters are saying, these are waves coming in from somewhere else, then every great idea is like a UFO. And if you get the great idea and you bring it into the world, you've become a UFO runway that has brought this brand new technology into this dimension, which is why every single great idea, every single great invention impacts our society in the same way contact with some advanced civilization would impact our society. It just doesn't look the way we think it looks. But Tesla, when you look at, like, he had a vision of an alternating current engine. He had a seizure, saw this thing, and it transformed all of society. So where are the ideas coming from? Well, they're coming from, well, you could say our subconscious, but what is that? And what's beneath the subconscious? Where are these things growing in from? And your guess is as good as mine, man. I like to think it's aliens.
I think it's the way I always. There we go. That's one. Put that down on the list. But I think it's funny that even people who don't think this way, they'll just say it offhand, like, "Well, it's in the zeitgeist now," and you're like, "Do you realize what a fucking heavy thought that is for some marketing guy just to throw out?
Right.
We better get on this because it's in the zeitgeist."
Yeah, right.
And I hear people around here saying it. I'm like, do you fucking get that you're just saying that we don't have these ideas? They're just floating around.
But I love the idea of thinking of it like that, because then somebody who is a genius or someone who you put at a level where they're operating better just has a certain openness,
right,
not necessarily some unique skill or some unique brain, but just
That's
like
right.
the ability to open their mind and be like a receptacle for that to come through.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the producer that I was talking about this concept, because he was saying he thought that songwriters were as open as you said.
Yeah.
And then I said to him, that how come Brian Wilson has never written a Bob Dylan song? And he goes, you just fucked me up. I'm going to have to deal with that for a while. But that is another thing, is like, why is it only open at a certain period of time for them, you know?
Well, so is it luck, right?
Yeah.
It seems like, okay, why do you catch a fish? Well, you catch a fish because you know where to steer your boat. And pretty much after that, it's up to the fish, right? You know what bait to use. You know what time of day to go fishing. So I think a good artist is somebody who maybe has some ability to put themselves into a great place to catch ideas, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be biting that specific day.
Right.
Because we only see when you see a song, you're seeing the end result of countless collaborations and revisions, and so many different people have been involved in that thing. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's about getting yourself in the right place at the right time.
Like a surfer has to know how to surf. He has to go out, know where to break it, exactly where in the wave to go. But the interesting thing is, that's the waves that we end up thinking are beautiful. We're like, oh, now I get it. That fucking dude is on that wave. That's gorgeous. But before, we might see that wave without it and just be like, yeah, it's a wave.
That's right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
You can't appreciate a wave unless some dude with abs is riding a piece of wood on it.
Inside. Oh, dude, it was so much fun to have you come in here.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm glad that you're the guy that you sound like too, man. So this was really fun. Could end up doing this every day. And you're out tonight. Is this open to the public?
Yeah, it's open to the public. It's the A&B Home at the Deepak Chopra Theater. I've tweeted it a bunch. If you go on my Twitter, you can see it. If you guys want to come, it'll be just like this conversation. I wish we could just continue this conversation there.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it the next time you're in town. We'll do this.
Thank you.
Somewhere in front of an audience or something, because I have a blast with this.
Check out Duncan's podcast, The Duncan Trussell Family Hour, available on iTunes and at DuncanTrussell.com, and check him out on Twitter at Duncan Trussell.
That's it for us today. We'll see everybody again in 1974.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evening is over. We hope you all enjoyed yourselves, and we'll see you all again in 1974. Good evening!